through the morning and into the afternoon. Again, there'll be showers, but they're most likely to focus towards the southwest. Similar conditions on Monday.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You really could be our next big winner with an incredible £20,000 in tax-free cash to play with this summer. What would you spend that on? Well, whilst you're thinking about it, listen to some of our previous winners getting that winning phone call from us.
I'm Charles. I'm on £18,000 cash. It was just amazing, and as soon as it goes into your bank account, it just changed. It's a life-changing thing. Just go for it. It's an absolute must. You must try and go for it.
The next winning call could be answered by you. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
A very good afternoon to you and a very happy Friday. It's 3 p.m. Welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News, broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster, all across the UK. On today's show, responding to Sir Keir Starmer's six-step plan, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Jeremy Hunt, today roared. Starmer will help himself to your family's wallet. He also accused Labour of fake news by scaring pensioners over national insurance reform, and he also called Angela Rayner's workers' rights reforms an unmitigated tragedy. Well, that's all fine and dandy, but can the Tories offer voters a desperately needed tax cut? Next up, I have the shocking story of the asylum seeker who murdered a pensioner. Ahmed Ali had claimed it was revenge for the Israel-Hamas conflict. He's now been jailed for life with a minimum term of 45 years. And later in the show, I'll be joined in the studio by my all-star panel. And today I'll be asking them this question. Should Britain accept Palestinian refugees? And can we trust the Labour Party to run the country? That's all coming up between now and 6 p.m. Welcome to the show. Always a delight to have your company. So the big question I'm asking today is this. Earlier this week, 50 MPs and peers said that the UK should accept Palestinian refugees to the country. It's called the Gaza Family Scheme. They clearly didn't see the memo from Denmark, which showed in 1992 a similar scheme ended up with 64% of those admitted to the country with criminal records and 65% taking benefits. Should we really be doing the same thing? And in the last hour, an incredible story has broken, in my opinion, and that is this. Thanks to the Palestinian Football Association, yes, they've actually got one, putting pressure on FIFA, just like the Eurovision Song Contest. Now there's an emergency meeting to think about kicking Israel out of world football. What on earth is going on? Loads to discuss in the next hour. Get in touch with your views on both of those comments. And it's gbnews.com/your say. But let's kick off the show with your headlines.
Good afternoon. It's 2 minutes past 3. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB newsroom. First, a recap of the breaking news from Manchester in the last hour, where a teacher has been found guilty of 6 counts of sexual activity with a child. 30-year-old Rebecca Jones was already suspended from her job and on bail for having sex with a 15-year-old when she began a sexual relationship with a second teenager, aged 16, and became pregnant. During her 2-week trial, the high school teacher told the court she craved attention and struggled following the breakdown of a 9-year relationship, but denied the allegations against her. A Moroccan asylum seeker has been jailed for life with a minimum term of 45 years for murdering a pensioner in an attack motivated by the conflict in Gaza. Ahmed Ali stabbed 70-year-old Terence Carney 6 times in Hartlepool in what was intended as revenge for the Israel-Hamas conflict. He told police the attack a week after the Hamas attacks on Israel was for the people of Gaza, and he had wanted to kill more victims. Alid was also found guilty of the attempted murder of his housemate, who he had attacked before the fatal stabbing of Mr. Carney. The Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, has declined to give a cast-iron guarantee of tax cuts, while insisting the tax burden would go down under a future Conservative government. He warns that Labour will be forced to raise taxes to pay for their spending pledges, as he reiterated his own commitment to eliminating national insurance. Speaking in London this morning, the Chancellor accused his shadow, Rachel Reeves, of resorting to playground politics with her criticism of the high levels of taxation on UK households.
When it comes to Labour policies on jobs, welfare reform and tax, the difference, if they are elected, will be profound and damaging for every family in the country. Labour like to criticise recent tax rises, thinking people don't know what caused them: the furlough scheme, the energy price guarantee and billions of pounds in cost of living support. But Labour supported those policies, which is why it is playground politics to use those tax rises to distract debate from the biggest divide in British politics today: what happens to the tax burden next?
Meanwhile, Shadow Financial Secretary James Murray says it's time for change.
There's a desperate attempt to distract by Jeremy Hunt from the Conservatives' record in office. You know, we know the tax burden is set to be the highest in 70 years. The average household is going to be £870 worse off. And frankly, they're probably trying to distract from their own £46 billion unfunded commitment to abolish national insurance. I think all this underscores that it's time for change and it's time for a general election.
Now, the UK Health Security Agency has confirmed 46 cases of cryptosporidium and over 100 others reporting symptoms in Brixham in Devon. It is thought a damaged air valve on a pipe in a field containing cattle has been identified as the potential site of the outbreak. Bottled water has been handed out to residents as people have been told to stop using tap water for drinking without boiling it first, and schools have been forced to shut. Exchequer Secretary to the Treasury, Gareth Davies, says it's important to hold water companies to account.
Well, it's a very troubling development that we're hearing in Devon. Of course it is. We've taken very tough action to strengthen the powers of the regulator, to allow them to hold companies to account. As the Chancellor has just said, we've seen significant investment as a result of privatisation. The only water company in addition to the one that the Chancellor referenced that is worse is in Scotland, which is not privatised. And so this is a matter of holding companies to account, making sure that they're investing, and this government is focused on making sure that happens.
And the world #1 golfer, Scottie Scheffler, has been detained and handcuffed outside Valhalla Golf Club, where he's playing in the US PGA Championships. The incident occurred after a misunderstanding with police who were managing traffic flow. He was later booked into jail and Louisville Department of Corrections issued a mugshot. He's due to tee off in the second round just after 3 p.m. And for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Martin.
Thank you, Sophia. Now, we've got so much to get through, so let's get cracking. And the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, has drawn the battle lines ahead of the next general election. He told voters that if the Conservatives stay in power, they will cut taxes, while Labour will not.
And we're going to start with the great Chris Hope.
Chancellor, thank you for taking GB News' question. You say you want to cut taxes. You've been saying that for months. But you have cut national insurance twice, £900 off the average person tax bill. But you've frozen tax thresholds and the polls aren't shifting. Why not? Is it you, your party, the country wants to change, possibly? And just secondly, do you want a second budget pre-election to cut taxes?
It is, not a great insight, with great respect to you, Chris, to say that putting up taxes, as I had to do in the autumn statement in 22, is not popular. But it was the right thing to do for the economy. And we can see today, when the IMF are saying that our economy will grow faster than any major European country over the next 6 years, that those decisions have been the right ones. They paid off. And that's why we took them. But now we're in an election year. And if people are worried about tax, then I would just say one very simple thing. There is a choice. The Labour government, the Labour Party does not want, and a future Labour government does not want, to cut the tax burden. A future Conservative government will. That is the big choice in British politics. And our argument is, this isn't just about family budgets. We understand how important those are when it comes to cost of living pressures. Our argument is, this is about the future growth of the economy, because we can see, looking around the world, that more lightly taxed economies have more dynamic private sectors, they grow faster, and in the end that is more money for precious public services like the NHS.
Well, as you'd expect, Labour weren't impressed at all with what Jeremy Hunt had to say. And check out what the Shadow Financial Secretary to the Treasury, James Murray, had to say.
I think, frankly, this is a desperate attempt to distract by Jeremy Hunt from the Conservatives' record in office. We know the tax burden is set to be the highest in 70 years. The average household is going to be £870 worse off. And frankly, they're probably trying to distract from their own £46 billion unfunded commitment to abolish national insurance. I think all this underscores is it's time for change and it's time for a general election.
Well, for a full analysis of that now, joined by the great Christopher Hope, our political editor, as endorsed by the Chancellor there, and the former Labour advisor, the great Matthew.
I was worried I was going to miss out for a moment. You're the great Martin Daubney, of course.
I had to say, otherwise I'd have got a slap.
The marvellous Martin.
Now, thank you very much, guys. Now, loads to get stuck into. Yesterday, we were saying, what are the Tories going to say? How are they going to respond? It's fair to say that Jeremy Hunt came out guns blazing, accusing the Labour Party of fake news. Storm will help himself to your family's wallets, accusing him basically of being a pickpocket, an unmitigated tragedy. Angela Rayner's workers' rights reform, and then saying it would cost every household £2,100. But the big question is, as you said, is it you? More to the point, has he got a plan?
The problem he's got, Jeremy Hunt, and he produced this document here, Labour's Tax Rises, 19-page dossier from CCHQ, passed around to journalists. You saw there Labour's tax rises behind and in front of Jeremy Hunt when he spoke. And that's quite interesting, isn't it? Because normally you don't have such an obvious adopting of the opponent's name. It's normally like my opponent, I don't say who they are, but they're being very clear this is on Labour, Labour, Labour. He's saying that we will cut taxes, Labour won't. Well, we do know from yesterday, this My First Steps, it says here, as we said yesterday on the programme, Martin, that Labour will keep taxes as low as possible but not cut them. The Tories see a window there to say we will cut taxes and look at what we've done with national insurance. My question now was to say, well, you've done all that. You've saved £900 off the average tax bill. Nothing's happened. Nothing has changed in the polls. Will it work? And in fact, maybe people are saying, well, we know that we're being dragged further into this fiscal drag, these thresholds because of higher inflation. We don't believe you, Jeremy Hunt. And that's the problem they've got. There's a credibility issue here with the Tory party. How do they cut through? We've got polling out today from people polling for GBNews showing the Tories on 20%. And Labour on 47%. But just finally on the polling, what the Tories might like from this is the fact that only 5% have a great deal of confidence that Labour will deliver on these first steps. So I think there's a kind of plague on all their houses at the moment in politics.
Can I just say that I feel a bit put out that yours is bigger than mine?
Mine is bigger, look. Well, yours is longer, Martin.
Well, where's this conversation going? It is Friday. Matthew, let's get this conversation back on track.
Absolutely. I was going to say, Keir's is bigger than Tony Blair, but Keir's got a bigger pledge card than Tony's.
On a serious point, yesterday it was very much echoes of the Blair regime. In fact,
I remember the pledge card the first time round.
Nigel Farage said it's Blair without the flair, which is probably a bit harsh, but nevertheless the Conservative Party are having to respond to what Sir Keir Starmer is saying. And I guess my question to you, my question to the Tories, my question to everybody is it's OK to have a pop at the Labour Party, but we've had consecutive tax rises, how many times? 18 times. They've got the highest tax regime since World War II.
Well, remember on Monday, the Prime Minister, you don't normally get two major interventions in a week. That's quite unusual. There's normally one. So the Prime Minister on Monday, in his major relaunch speech, told us that we shouldn't look at the 14 years of record of the Tory government. We should just look at his record as though he was nothing to do with the Tory party. He's like all those candidates in the local elections who refused to put Tories on the posters. All I can say about today is I had to look up that catchphrase from one of the Drag Race contestants. The cheek, the nerve, the gall, the gumption, the audacity of saying that of attacking anybody else on tax when when taxes under you have hit a 70-year high. Yes, we've had COVID, but other governments around the world have dealt with COVID as well and not had a tax burden on ordinary families.
Well, on that very point, yes, COVID was a big £400 billion shock to the economy. Then there's an 8-hour gap in the middle of the night. Then the war broke out in Ukraine with invasion by Russia. That prompted the energy shock. So the government feels that they're getting no credit for doing the energy price bill, the energy bill cap. Why is no one giving them any credit? They think it's dishonest of Labour to ignore that. That's the elephant in the room.
Yeah, it's not dishonest of Labour to ignore it because governments around the world had both things to cope with, and taxes are not at record highs in countries around the world, including countries with centre-left governments from similar parties to Labour. I have to say, though, an election is in the offing. I have a slight feeling that both of these events were planned when we thought we might have an early election, because they've both got the whiff of what you do in an election campaign, where you have, the war of pens. We had the Tory secret plan when I was in Labour HQ in the 2015 election, all the documents like that. So I think that's why they've come out fighting so quickly, because I think, you don't do a document like that overnight or do a launch on the scale we saw yesterday overnight.
Can I ask you...
So that means we've got 6 more months of it, Martin.
Yeah, well, it's great for us, but the nation will be burying their heads under a pillow. On a serious point, the People's poll that we conducted has thrown some interesting points up, which I think Labour might need to have a good think about. Politics is about competence and trust, isn't it? Are the Labour Party competent, and can we trust them? It's quite concerned for the Labour Party, I would say, where only 5% of people poll. Now, bear in mind, GBNews viewers aren't against the Labour Party. The last poll, in fact, showed that over 30% of them are prepared to vote for the Labour Party. This is not a skewed poll. Only 5% of the public have a great deal of trust in Labour delivering on these pledges that came out yesterday. Is that a problem? You can talk all you like. Can you do the walk?
I think what it is a problem for all politicians. I think Chris hit the nail on the head a few moments ago, because there is such cynicism at the moment. And joking aside about the competing sizes of Tony Blair and Keir Starmer's pledge card, the language actually on the front is very different, because it clearly says my first steps, because it's acknowledging that you can't come in and change everything overnight, that you can only deliver on certain specific things. And that's what I think, that's why the language, that phrase would have been a focus group to death. It would have been, run past the polling company, and it will have chimed with the public, because I think the public are going to see that Keir isn't promising the earth. This isn't cakeism in the Boris days when you thought you could have everything and not pay for it. This is being realistic. And that's why it was realistic yesterday when he was talking to Chris about the fact that he can't offer tax cuts in the early days, because, there simply isn't the money there to do it. So it's about realism, which I think plays into his image of quiet competence.
Matthew, are you content with my first steps, not our first steps?
Yeah, I mean, I
look
think
at
so.
all the pledge cards going back to 97 through 2010, 15, they've all done them. Your party is one of collective working together. That's very presidential, and he hasn't really got the same authority that Tony Blair had.
Well, I think that's why he's done it. I think if you're clearly if you're seen as the great leader, then you can take you can give one to the team.
Yeah.
I think if you're what they'll be trying to do with the rolled up sleeves is try and up his strength, because that is obviously a weakness. People don't find he's got as much personality as Blair, etc.
Very quick final question to you. Very quick. They've traded blows on tax. They've both come out swinging. Surely now for the Conservatives, it's tax cuts or tatty bye.
Yes, almost certainly. And we did ask them twice, Jeremy Hunt, will there be a budget, a fiscal moment before the election? He said there'll be one in the autumn statement, but he's not sure when that will be. Because, of course, if you have an autumn statement, it's got to be pre-election. It can't be in November, around the time of the general election. So almost certainly they will say, vote for us and we'll do this, this and this to national insurance and maybe even income tax, I think.
OK, thank you very much, Chris Oak, Matthew Lazar. There's going to need to be a massive rabbit pulled out that hat, I think. We'll have loads more analysis what Jeremy Hunt had to say and the Tories' tax plans throughout the rest of the show, of course. And there's plenty of coverage on our website, gbnews.com. You've helped to make it the fastest growing national news website in the country, so thank you very much. Now, there's still plenty of time to win our biggest cash prize so far, a whopping 20 grand tax-free. Imagine having that in your bank accounts this summer. You've got to be in it to win it. And here's the chance for you to bag the lot.
Don't miss your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far. A totally terrific £20,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer spectacular. You could use that cash to splash out on a holiday, make the garden glam, buy a new car, or just save it for a rainy day. Whatever you'd spend £20,000 on, make sure you don't miss the chance to make it yours. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Now, in our People's Poll, just 29% of people would support a scheme to bring Palestinian refugees to the UK. We'll have full analysis on that next. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
The fact that the King has not found time during the 3 days that his younger son has been in London to see him is a definite right royal flea in the ear for Prince Harry. And a lot of people around the country and around the world will be saying, and about time too. What Harry and his wife have said, either directly or through their amanuensis and fan, Omid Scobie, in his book, Endgame, it's been very, very bitter, very hard, very cruel allegations against not just the King and Queen Camilla, but Prince William and his wife, who, as we know, is being treated for the as yet undisclosed form of cancer. And that has gone home very, very firmly. Nothing could actually be worse in a family to have this division of bitterness and unkindness. And words have power, actions have consequences, and I think that's what we're seeing played out here. The division between the California couple in their hilltop Camelot and the British royal family getting on with the job is now very, very deep, and the divisions are stark, us see, and between indeed the Spencer family and the Mountbatten Windsors.
Well, Karen Malone earlier was suggesting that people are starting to feel a bit more sorry for Harry and there's a bit more support towards him. Are you sensing anything like that?
Well, I tell you what, Nana, I thought it was great that he got a great cheer yesterday because people suddenly saw the happy Prince that we used to know.
Friday nights on GB News with Dubes & Co from 6, followed by Lee Anderson's Real World at 7. At 8, it's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. And at 9, join Patrick Christie's Tonight, followed by Headliners at 11, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Earlier on breakfast.
It's not a good time, I don't think, to be in a water company at the present time. You're getting the flack from the pollution in our rivers, and now you've got issues like this. But I must stress, this is a rare occurrence.
We are inheriting an economy which is broken. We have had no growth for 14 years.
Somebody else also starred in the Amazon series.
This is very true. I actually discovered this by chance last night.
Guy that looked like you. I was watching it the other day. And...
Who is that? Leaning up against the Cabinet Office.
Is that Britain's sexiest, second most sexy man?
Join us for breakfast every day at 6 a.m.
Welcome back. It's approaching 23 minutes past 3. I'm Martin Daubney and this is GB News. Now, later in the show, I look ahead to one of the biggest fights of all time as Britain's Tyson Fury gets ready to take on Alexander Usyk, the Ukrainian. Massive fight ahead. Fury is reportedly being paid up to £78 million. Before that, earlier this week, 50 MPs and peers called for the creation of a so-called Gaza family scheme that would see Palestinian refugees move to the UK. But according to the latest GB News People's poll, the British public aren't so keen on the idea. People were asked this question: to what extent would you support a scheme to take in refugees from Palestine? Here's how they responded. 29% of people said that they strongly support or tend to support the idea, while 42% of people strongly oppose or tend to oppose it. So the public opinion is clearly very much against this. Now I'm joined in the studio by our political correspondent, Olivia Utley. Olivia, welcome to the show. So on Monday, this letter emerged, 50 MPs and peers, has to be said mainly from the Labour side of the camp, wrote to the Home Secretary demanding that we took Palestinian refugees in. The people have spoken, and once again, it appears to indicate that the politicians are completely out of touch with the public on this.
Absolutely. I think this indicates quite a big fight coming for Labour. The Conservative government have said time and again that they have no plans to admit Palestinian refugees to the UK. But obviously, if Keir Starmer becomes Prime Minister later this year, there will be huge pressure on him from his own backbenchers to open up some sort of Palestinian refugee scheme. And as this poll shows, that idea just is not popular with the public. A very large proportion actually don't know, which is quite interesting in itself, because I expect in the next few months we can see those numbers solidify on one side or the other. But just 12% strongly support the idea for such a scheme. Now, if you compare that to the response to the Russian invasion of Ukraine right at the beginning, weeks after the first invasion, the question wasn't quite the same, but YouGov put a question to the British public, which was, do you believe we have a moral obligation to help to admit refugees from Ukraine? And 65% of the population said yes. There is clearly a huge difference here, and presumably that difference is cultural. It's about values. It's about the difference between letting people in who've come from Europe and letting in people with a whole different set of values from the Middle East. And that is probably what's causing that tension. It'll be really interesting to see what, if anything, Keir Starmer says about this. At the moment, he's keeping his powder dry, and I suspect he'll continue to do so until well after a general election.
And it makes you wonder why they're doing this, because they know it won't be enacted. These MPs who are writing the letter, no way on earth, particularly would a Conservative government do this. I don't think there's any way on earth that a Labour Party government would do this. Is it just virtue signalling to their constituents once again to pander to votes, the pro-Palestine mob?
I think possibly there's an element of, well, appealing to their constituents. I think it's also worth remembering that Labour Party members are very important to Labour MPs at the moment. It's not just the wider voters. It's not just for them about winning over swing voters who probably, from this poll anyway, aren't particularly keen on a Palestinian refugee scheme. It's about keeping on side those Labour members. Labour members tend to be much further to the left than the average Labour voter. And those are the people who go out and knock on doors at general elections. He'll do all the leafleting, do all the hard work, put in the steps to get MPs re-elected. So I suspect that these MPs are very keen to keep Labour members on side.
And the don't knows might have their opinions swayed. If we look at a study from 1992, Denmark accepted 321 Palestinian refugees. The data, the ONS data of Denmark, went on to show 63% of those originally admitted went on to have criminal records. 49% of them were fined or otherwise, 26% jailed, plus 65% of all Palestinians who went to Denmark ended up on some type of benefit. If those kind of figures were relayed to the British public, they might not be so unsure.
I think you're probably right about that. It's also quite interesting to look at, YouGov did a poll a couple of months ago looking into the people who said that they did want to accept Palestinian refugees into this country. How many Palestinian refugees did they think Britain should be accepting? And the vast majority were looking at a few thousand. So it's not kind of huge numbers. So it's interesting. I wonder if the politicians are actually much, much further, more extreme about this, more keen on a much bigger scheme than even some of those who are in the 12% of strongly support on our poll.
Superb stuff. Olivia Utley, thanks for joining me in the studio. Now to a story that broke in the last hour, and a female teacher has been found guilty of having sex with 2 schoolboys. Rebecca Joynes has been convicted of 4 counts of sexual activity with a child and 2 counts of sexual activity with a child by a person in a position of trust. Well, our North West of England reporter Sophie Reaper is outside Manchester Crown Court. Sophie, a case has generated a huge amount of controversy. What's the latest?
Well, Martin, there's been some incredibly disturbing details that's come out of this trial in the past couple of weeks here at Manchester Crown Court, which has ultimately led, as you say, to Rebecca Joynes being found guilty on all 6 counts. Now, just to give our viewers a bit of background information, Rebecca Joynes was a maths teacher at a school in Greater Manchester when she became embroiled in all of this, these relations with boy A and boy B, whom cannot be named because of legal restrictions around their age. Now, some of these details are really quite incredible. We heard, for example, that with boy A, she took him to the Trafford Centre and purchased him an expensive designer belt. She then took him back to her flat in Salford. Now, she denies any kind of sexual relationship with boy A. He disagrees, and in fact, upon investigation, Greater Manchester Police found his semen on her bedsheets. Now, all of this happened. She was suspended from her job as a teacher, and she was on bail whilst under investigation. And whilst all of that was going on, she then struck up a sexual relationship with another boy, boy B. Now, we heard in the courts that she had exchanged flirtatious messages via Snapchat with him, including one on his 16th birthday when he informed her that he was then of the legal age of consent. Now, Rebecca Joynes says that it only became sexual once he had reached the age of 16 and once she had been dismissed from her job, so she was no longer in that position of power. However, boy B told the courts that the sexual relationship started prior to this. In fact, she eventually became pregnant with boy B's child. He told the courts, now I think about it, it was emotional abuse. She basically mentally abused me. Then I sacrificed 18 months for a paedophile. The court also heard about disputes between boy B and Joynes on whether to keep the baby. She did ultimately keep it. And of course, many more details that came out over the course of the 2 weeks. But just to reiterate, she has now been found guilty on all 6 counts, including 4 counts of sexual activity with a child.
Thank you, Sophie Reaper, from outside of Manchester Crown Court. And I just hasten to add, the media treatment of this, I think, would have been very, very different if the genders had been reversed. Sophie Reaper, thanks for joining us. Now, still lots more still to come between now and 4 o'clock, and we're, of course, live to Devon, where people have been warned that cases of a waterborne disease caused by a parasite could continue for 2 more weeks. But first, it's your headlines with Sophia Wensler.
Martin, thank you. It's 3:31. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB newsroom. As you've been hearing, a teacher has been found guilty of having sex with 2 schoolboys. 30-year-old Rebecca Joins was convicted of 6 counts of engaging in sexual activity with a child, including 2 while being a person in a position of trust. She denied having sex with 1 schoolboy and claimed a relationship with a second teenager only began once he had left school and once she had been sacked. The UK Health Security Agency says there are now 46 confirmed cases of cryptosporidium after water supplies in Brixham in Devon were contaminated. It means cases of the diarrheal illness have been more than doubled in the last year since yesterday. 16,000 homes and businesses have been told a parasite got into supplies after potential contamination from cattle manure. Hundreds of Border Force officers at Heathrow Airport are set to strike at the end of half-term in a row over rotas. 500 members of the PSC union will walk out for 3 days, starting on the 31st of May. It's expected the strike action will disrupt passport checks for travellers coming into the UK. 2 police officers who took a 2-hour meal break for a kebab on the night of the Manchester Arena attack have been handed final written warnings. Their absence meant there were no officers patrolling the area when Salman Abedi made his final approach to the city room where he detonated his explosive. The police watchdogs also recommended that British Transport Police apologise to the families of the victims. And the world #1 golfer, Scottie Scheffler, has described his arrest on the way to the US PGA Championship in Valhalla this morning as a big misunderstanding following a very chaotic situation. The incident occurred with police who were managing traffic flow. He was later booked into jail and Louisville Department of Corrections issued a mugshot. He was able to arrive on course on time to tee off in the second round of the event. And for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sophia. Now, we've got lots more still to come, but in a few minutes, there's the latest on the waterborne disease that's causing sickness and diarrhoea in one Devon town. But first, there's a brand new way to get in touch with us here at GB News. And here's Bev Turner with all of the details.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family. Simply go to gbnews.com/your say.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. The A19 in Northumberland remains closed off between the A189 at the Moor Farm roundabout through towards the A1056 at the Killingworth junction. Long delays either side at the scene of a collision there. Southbound M40 slow going to Gaydon down to Banbury. Junction 12 to 11 slow going following an earlier Overton vehicle, although slightly better news, all the lanes are back open. Berkshire eastbound M4 at Cheveley at 13, a lane shut for a breakdown, that's causing queues. A vehicle having a tyre change earlier, clockwise M25 means all lanes open but still queuing away from Chertsey at junction 11, and the entry slip onto the westbound M27 at Hamble at junction 8 part blocked in queuing. A lorry and a car there involved in a collision. It's just as you join the main carriageway there, and that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
So, Private Members Club in London, the Garrick Club, has voted to allow women members for the first time in its history.
So it's been around for 193 years. Women were not allowed as members, but they could go in as guests of male members. But there was a vote last night, 60% said time to allow women in on equal terms.
We don't really care about being part of a stuffy boys' club, and to join us to talk about this is Georgia Gilhole. Good morning, Georgia. Do women care about this? Have The Guardian got nothing better to do?
Apparently not, considering we have a huge range of domestic and global crises ongoing at the moment. I think, first and foremost, this was a campaign. It's been successful now by and for elites. I believe the chief reporter at The Guardian who spearheaded this was Amelia Gentleman.
That's right.
And in the initial coverage, she didn't even mention that her father-in-law, I believe, Stanley Johnson, obviously the father of former Prime Minister Boris Johnson, a very influential member of the Tory party. She didn't mention that he was a member, which I find bizarre. It's something that should have gone on that list if it was a list of influential members, which it was.
So hang on a minute, who's that?
Amelia Gentleman wrote the story in The Guardian. She's married to Joe Johnson, Boris's brother.
Boris's brother.
And so Stanley is a member of the Garrick, but she omitted that from her piece.
Ah.
Yeah. And I think, you know, the majority of British women won't have even heard of the Garrick Club, nor any sort of private members' clubs in London. It's a very kind of elite inside thing.
It's actors, lawyers, writers.
Yeah, and I think they absolutely have their place, especially for networking with people in different careers or the same career as you. I think they have their place, holding charity events, that kind of thing, and conferences.
We already have members' clubs mixed, and that stuff is still not happening. Just putting men and women together in this one space isn't going to help women in terms of cross-gender networking.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together. For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 3:38. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Now, later in the show, I'll ask whether Nigel Farage is right to say Sir Keir Starmer is Tony Blair without the flair. But first, the latest on the waterborne disease that's hit the town of Brixham in Devon. And residents have been warned that cases of the illness caused by a parasite could continue for a further 2 weeks. Around 16,000 households and businesses have been told not to use their tap water for drinking without boiling and cooling it first. Let's cross now to Brixham and speak to our South West of England reporter Jeff Moody. Jeff, welcome to the show. Yesterday you were telling us the pain being witnessed by some people was akin to childbirth, and now the saga rolls on. What's the latest?
I was indeed. Well, the latest is that the number of people that have officially been affected has doubled. It's now gone up. That's the ones that are officially diagnosed. There are thought to be hundreds more that have fallen ill but haven't actually been officially diagnosed as yet. So that number is rising considerably. Meanwhile, here at the bottling centre, people are still arriving. They're still arriving over here pretty much bumper to bumper throughout the day, and they're all coming through here and filling up with water. I must admit, there is a slightly different atmosphere here today. Yesterday, there was a real sense of panic, a real sense of frustration, a sense of anger. Today, we're being a little bit more British about it. More people are sort of saying, well, you know, wartime spirit, let's just get through this. It's only going to be a week or a couple of weeks. Let's just try and put a brave face on it. That's more the message today. But earlier on, I caught up with the MP for this region, Anthony Mangnall. He said that he's very, very angry with what's happened. Let's have a listen.
Unacceptable. There is no way to dress it up. You know, we should not, in the 21st century, have a community, 40,000 people, being unable to drink the water within their system. And that's what I've been saying from the get-go.
South West Water initially said that it was nothing to do with them, keep drinking the water. And then 2 days ago at 1 o'clock, suddenly they said, no, we've got it all wrong. make sure you boil everything. People are very frustrated with their attitude, aren't they?
Well, to be honest, I don't think it's just about being frustrated. I think it's about being bloody angry, if I might put it that way. To be told that you can drink water and carry on and it's nothing to do with South West Water has possibly led to a lot more people becoming ill as a result of that. We know that there are 20-odd confirmed cases of cryptosporidium, but we also know that there are hundreds of people who are suffering with symptoms of cryptosporidium. So this is much bigger than is actually being recognised, and I think this is the problem. South West Water, initially by denying it, essentially are to blame for so many more people getting ill, and that's my frustration, and I think residents are rightly angry about it. It's not just a frustration, it's real anger about this, and it's going to take a great deal of time to make sure that people have confidence in the water network again and that we have good drinkable water.
Well, South West Water says they are truly sorry for the situation and are working as hard as they can to try and rectify it. It's thought that the problem is an air valve that seems to have come loose and broken, and into that valve has seeped some raw sewage, some animal feces, and also some groundwater, which is as dirty as groundwater ever is. So that seems to be the problem. People here have actually been drinking traces of cow dung, which of course is alarming a lot of people and disgusting a lot of people too. And a lot of people asking, how on earth can this happen in Britain in 2024?
Indeed, Jeff Moody, the wartime spirit alive and kicking in Brixham. I think I'd have a very different type of wartime spirit if I'd been welded to the toilet for 3 days. Jeff Moody, thank you very much for that update. Now, moving on, just 5% of people have a great deal of trust in Labour delivering on their 6 pledges. Well, why is the public so disillusioned with politicians? I'll be discussing that next. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome to the latest GB News forecast from the Met Office. It's a tale of sunny spells and sharp showers for the rest of today and the next few days, in fact. Low pressure slipping away, so it's going to be less dominant across the UK, but still some instability in the air, and with warm sunshine in places, we are seeing the cloud development and the showers for many places during the rest of this afternoon and into the start of the evening. But overnight, as the temperatures tail away, we're going to see plenty of dry weather and some clear spells in the west, but cloudier skies elsewhere. And where we've got the cloud, 12 or 13 Celsius by dawn. Where we've got the clear spells, into the single figures. Many places will be dry as we start off the weekend. There'll be some sunshine around as well, but into the east of England, especially East Anglia and the far southeast, so into Kent, for example, some showery rain starting to appear, 1 or 2 showers elsewhere across the south coast. Wales, northwest England, plenty of sunshine first thing, but for northeast England as well as eastern Scotland, a lot of low cloud and mist. Northern Ireland seeing patchy cloud and mist as well. Largely dry for Scotland, some decent sunny spells in places. And as we go through the morning, actually, where we've got the layers of cloud, that will tend to break up. We're going to see some sunny spells developing, but there'll also be, once again, some shower development. Western and central Scotland seeing some sharp showers, but the majority of the showers will affect Wales and the southwest of England. And here they could be very lively with some heavy rain in places. Temperatures away from the showers and into the warm sunny spells reaching 20 to 23 Celsius. But those showers will continue to affect parts of Wales and the southwest into the evening before eventually fading away. And then into Sunday, again, warm sunny spells for many, but there will be some showers around, particularly across parts of southern England. Bye-bye.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me. My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 3:46. I'm Martin Daubney, and this is GB News. Now, at 4 o'clock, we'll hear from Jeremy Hunt again. The Chancellor's come out fighting today, accusing Labour of attempting to scare pensioners with what he said were lies about national insurance. Now, before that, let's get more on a story I spoke about earlier in the show, and it's this. 50 MPs and peers have called for the creation of a so-called Gaza family scheme that will see Palestinian refugees move to the UK. But according to the latest GB News People's poll, the British public isn't quite so keen on the idea. When people were asked to what extent would you support a scheme to take in refugees from Palestine, only 29% of people said they strongly support or tended to support the idea. You can see there only 12% strongly supported it, like those MPs, while 42% of people strongly opposed or tended to oppose it. Well, to discuss this now, I'm joined in the studio by the former Labour advisor Matthew Larzer and the author and broadcaster Emma Wolfe. Welcome back. Welcome to the show. Let's start with you. So I think this is an astonishing thing for MPs to have done. It has to be said, mostly Labour MPs and peers. And once again, clearly proving they're totally out of touch with the public.
I think they are. And I don't think this is... I'm not surprised by the findings. 42% feeling some resistance or strongly opposing the idea of this scheme. I don't think it is that the British public are not kind. When we have humanitarian crises, in terms of, in individual charitable donations, the British public are demonstrably very generous. We have, in the past 2 years, taken in many, many Ukrainian refugees. Foreign aid budget, again, although badly mismanaged, we are very, very generous. But I think we are now, the public are acknowledging we cannot take in all the world's problems. We cannot take in the world's huddled masses. We're not the Statue of Liberty. I'm afraid the British public are realistic about what we can actually cope with in this country. And, sadly, we've also seen a lot of criminality and violence and problems associated with asylum seekers in this country. That's just a fact.
Matthew, before we get into the nitty-gritty of the data and what this could mean in Britain, looking back to Denmark, I want to start with the fact this is ostensibly, the broad rump of this, are Labour Party MPs or peers. If the opinion polls are right, if the direction of travel is right, the Labour Party are about to run the country. How do you have so many MPs who are just totally out of touch with what the electorate think on Palestine? Welcoming refugees into the country from a war zone, history proves, can go terribly wrong.
So I think that they're MPs and peers from what you might call the sort of left of the party, or in the peers that have a sort of liberal worldview. And I think their heart is in the right place, but I don't think their head is in the right place on this scheme, because the ideal solution for Palestine is to have peace in Palestine, is to have a just and equitable settlement in the long term, and in the short term to have a much more sustainable situation there. So I think all our efforts should be not on, bringing a few thousand refugees to the UK. I don't think in this case is going to make a difference. There are geographic differences from Ukraine. People could get on a train from Ukraine and basically get a train from Ukraine and a few changes and end up in this country. It was much easier, whereas clearly people can't actually get out of Palestine at the moment because the border crossings are closed. So I don't quite... I can understand where their heart is, but I don't think it's been thought through, and I think that they should put their efforts into campaigning for peace rather than campaigning to bring refugees here.
I want to share some data with both of you that I've found. This is official Danish data, because in 1992 Denmark did accept 321 Palestinian refugees, and they went on to chart what became of them. Here's the broad brushstrokes. 63% of those originally admitted went on to have criminal records. 49% of them were fined, or otherwise 26% ended up in jail, either conditionally or unconditionally. And the figures prove that of the 270 that remained in the country, some died or moved away, 65% of them were on some form of benefits. Now, that's just data. Facts aren't racist. If that's what happened in data, and Emma, I put it to you that the situation now could be even graver, because they're coming from a war zone into a country which many, even who are in Britain now, think Britain is part of the problem, think we're part of this genocide against Palestinians. Surely this is an accident waiting to happen.
Exactly. I think, look, we've seen the criminality that can result from kind of uncontrolled immigration into this country. And I think that we need to, as Matthew says, focus on dealing with the situation or helping with the situation. Out there, people don't want to leave their own countries. In general, people don't want to leave their own homes. And that's what needs to be the focus, not this kind of misguided approach to, let's just set up another settlement scheme in this country. Because, frankly, this country can't cope with a lot more of its own people, let alone many, many people in need coming from difficult situations abroad.
And Matthew, the 10 Downing Street has said repeatedly, this won't ever happen. Well, so long as the Conservatives are in power. But I put it to you, if the Labour Party were getting to power with so many people, a very vocal rump, a very vocal wing of the Labour Party asking for things like this, is this a taste?
No, absolutely not, because I think that Keir Starmer and Yvette Cooper as Home Secretary would take exactly the same approach as the government, which is to say no to this notion. And the only people who actually floated it seriously in terms of doing it was Hamza Yousaf when he was First Minister of Scotland, said he wanted Scotland to take. Of course, it wasn't in his power. Immigration isn't devolved. So, no, it will be the same situation in a Labour government. Let's hope and work for peace, but let's say no to a mass resettlement scheme.
Maybe we should send them all to Hamza Yousaf's territory. Anyway, this leads me neatly on to the next thing that we asked the great British public, what they thought of the Labour Party, and the results won't make for happy reading for Sir Keir Starmer. Remember, their 6 pledges cover issues like the economy, the small boats crisis and NHS waiting lists. We asked people, how much, if at all, do you trust Labour to deliver on those pledges? And Matthew, just 5% had a great deal of trust, while 49% of people have not much or no trust at all in Labour delivering on the pledges. How does that make you feel?
So I think it's disappointing, but it's not just disappointing for Labour. I think it's disappointing for politics overall, because I think at the moment cynicism and distrust.
Specifically about the Labour
absolutely.
Party.
I mean, I'd be interested to see what the same answers were for the other parties, because I don't imagine they were any higher for the other parties. I think that Labour has got, this is so different. We talked about a little earlier, and we saw yesterday with the pictures, sort of echoes of 1997 when I was around there. I had hair and hope in 1997. I've still got some hope. I haven't got any hair, but I don't think the British people are full of hope like they were in 1997, because I think they've just been worn down by the events, frankly, of the last 20 years, because we had the global financial crisis at the end of the last Labour government as well. Okay. So I think it's disappointing. It's a big job of Keir to just kind of seal the deal, and Labour doesn't think it's a done deal, which is why you saw what they did yesterday.
And they've got about 45 seconds. The public don't seem to have a great deal of trust in Sir Keir Starmer. Is it just Sir Keir Starmer, or is it politics, period?
I think it's both. I think it's Starmer. Well, as Farage said yesterday, Starmer is Blair without the flair. There's none of the excitement, the sense of hope that we had in 1997 at all, but also a general exhaustion, I think, and disillusionment and disaffection with politics, not apathy. I don't think people have turned off. I think that they've lost trust, and they've seen politicians over the years failing to deliver, just literally making pledges and not even bothering. And the country's gone rapidly downhill in the past few years, and something needs to change.
OK, superb. A great end to the hour. Matthew and Emma, welcome you back in the next hour. Love having a panel on a Friday. Bit of spice at the end of the show. Now, the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, has promised that a future Conservative government would cut taxes. And he's criticised Labour's economic plans. Well, he would do, wouldn't he? I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's News Channel. Now it's time for your weather, and it's Aidan McGibbon.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to the latest GB News forecast from the Met Office. It's a tale of sunny spells and sharp showers for the rest of today and the next few days, in fact. Low pressure slipping away, so it's going to be less dominant across the UK, but still some instability in the air, and with warm sunshine in places, we are seeing the cloud development and the showers for many places during the rest of this afternoon and into the start of the evening. But overnight, as the temperatures Well, tail away, we're going to see plenty of dry weather and some clear spells in the west, but cloudier skies elsewhere. And where we've got the cloud, 12 or 13 Celsius by dawn. Where we've got the clear spells, into the single figures. Many places will be dry as we start off the weekend. There'll be some sunshine around as well, but into the east of England, especially East Anglia and the far southeast, so into Kent, for example, some showery rain starting to appear, 1 or 2 showers elsewhere across the south coast. Wales, northwest England, plenty of sunshine first thing, but for northeast England as well as eastern Scotland, a lot of low cloud and mist. Northern Ireland seeing patchy cloud and mist as well. Largely dry for Scotland, some decent sunny spells in places. And as we go through the morning, actually, where we've got the layers of cloud, that will tend to break up. We're going to see some sunny spells developing, but there'll also be, once again, some shower development. Western and central Scotland seeing some sharp showers, but the majority of the showers will affect Wales and the southwest of England. And here, they could be very lively with some heavy rain in places. Temperatures away from the showers and into the warm sunny spells reaching 20 to 23 Celsius. But those showers will continue to affect parts of Wales and the southwest into the evening before eventually fading away. And then into Sunday, again, warm sunny spells for many, but there will be some showers around, particularly across parts of southern England. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
I'm Jules Buckley. Good afternoon. Clockwise M60 queuing for about half an hour. The stretch from Barton to Eccles 11 to 12 has a lane shut at the scene of a collision queuing back to Junction 8. Westbound M58 closed from the M6 at Orrell Junction 26 to Bickerstaff at Junction 3 queuing back towards Haydock Junction 23 on the M6. Long delays for a collision there. Still 2-lane shut northbound M5 at West Bromwich Junction 1. Queuing back to Junction 3. There's a broken down lorry there. Southbound M5 18 to Portishead 19, long queues, 2-lane shut. That's due to a collision. And the clockwise side of the M25 is still struggling. There's long delays at the Wisley Interchange Junction 10. It follows an earlier collision there. That's cleared, but of course it's in the roadworks, and that's why it's struggling to clear. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Don't miss your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far. A totally terrific £20,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer spectacular. You could use that cash to splash out on a holiday, make the garden glam, buy a new car, or just save it for a rainy day. Whatever you'd spend £20,000 on, make sure you don't miss the chance to make it yours. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
A very good afternoon to you and a happy Friday. It's 4 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News, broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster, all across the UK. On today's show, responding to Sir Keir Starmer's six-step plan from yesterday, today the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Jeremy Hunt, roared. Starmer will help himself to your family's wallets. He also accused Labour of fake news by scaring pensioners over national insurance reform. And he also called Angela Rayner's workers' rights reforms an unmitigated tragedy. Can the Tories really offer voters a desperately needed tax cut? Whoops, now let's go live now to Manchester, where police are giving a statement after teacher Rebecca Joins was found guilty of 6 counts of sexual activity with 2 teens.
To groom 2 teenagers. We now wait for Joins to face the consequences of her actions. I would like to thank the officers who have worked closely with the victims and their families in establishing the full circumstances of this case, and the investigation team for their hard work and dedication during this investigation. The 2 victims and their families have asked for their privacy to be respected now and moving forward. They all wish to carry on with their lives and put this ordeal behind them. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. And there's a short statement there from Detective Constable Beth Alexander outside Manchester Crown Court. That, of course, was referring to the case earlier of the 2 teens. The teacher found sexually abusing 2 teens. Now, moving on with the rest of the headlines. FIFA is holding an urgent meeting to discuss kicking Israel out of world football. And after the UK's first secure school saw an 82% drop in youth crime, is it time to roll out boot camps for yobbos nationwide? I'll discuss this and more with my all-star panel. And, of course, I want to hear from you. And right now, there's a new way to get in touch with us. Send your views and post your comments by visiting gbnews.com/your say. But first, it's time for your headlines, and it's Sam Francis.
Martin, thank you very much and good afternoon to you. It's just after 4 o'clock and we'll start with that news coming to us out of Manchester Crown Court, where a teacher has been found guilty of having sex with 2 schoolboys. Just in the last few minutes there, we were hearing from the detective outside court. That's after 30-year-old Rebecca Jones was convicted of 6 counts of engaging in sexual activity with a child. She was already suspended from her job and on bail for having sex with a 15-year-old. When she began a separate sexual relationship with a second teenager, aged 16, and she then became pregnant. During her 2-week trial, the high school teacher told the court that she craved attention and had struggled following the breakdown of a 9-year relationship, but had denied the allegations against her. In other news, there are now 46 confirmed cases of cryptosporidium, according to health officials. That's after water supplies in Brixham in Devon were contaminated. It means cases of the diarrhoea-inducing illness have more than doubled in less than 24 hours. 16,000 homes and businesses have been told a parasite got into the water supply after possible contamination from cow manure. An asylum seeker who murdered a 70-year-old man in what a judge described as a terrorist act has been jailed today for at least 44 years. 45-year-old Ahmed Ali Alid repeatedly stabbed Terence Carney in Hartlepool town centre last October, just 8 days after the Hamas attacks in Israel. During sentencing, the judge said his actions were in apparent revenge for the conflict in Gaza. The Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, has declined to give a cast-iron guarantee of tax cuts, but insists the tax burden will go down under a future Conservative government. He warns that Labour will be forced to raise taxes to pay for their spending pledges, as he reiterated his own commitment to eliminating national insurance. Well, speaking in London this morning, the Chancellor accused his shadow, Rachel Reeves, of resorting to playground politics with her criticism of the high levels of taxation on UK households.
When it comes to Labour policies on jobs, welfare reform and tax, the difference, if they are elected, will be profound and damaging for every family in the country. Labour like to criticise recent tax rises, thinking people don't know what caused them: the furlough scheme, the energy price guarantee and billions of pounds in cost of living support. But Labour supported those policies, which is why it is playground politics to use those tax rises to distract debate from the biggest divide in British politics today. what happens to the tax burden next.
Jeremy Hunt there speaking earlier this morning. Well, hundreds of Border Force officers at Heathrow Airport are set to strike at the end of half-term in a row over rotas. 500 members of the PCS union will walk out for 3 days, starting on the 31st of this month. It's expected the strike action will disrupt passport checks for travellers coming into the UK. 2 police officers who took a 2-hour meal break for a kebab on the night of the Manchester Arena attack have been handed final written warnings. Their absence meant that there were no officers patrolling the area when Salman Abedi made his final approach to the city room, where he then detonated his explosive. The police watchdogs also recommended that British Transport Police apologise to the families of the victims. And finally, some news from the sporting world. The world #1 golfer Scottie Scheffler has described his arrest on the way to the US PGA Championship today, this morning, as a big misunderstanding following what he called a very chaotic situation. That incident occurred with police who were managing traffic flow. He was later booked into jail in Louisville Department of Corrections, who issued a mugshot. He was able to arrive, though, on course in time to tee off in the second round of the event. That's the latest from the newsroom. Another update in the next half hour. Until then, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sam. Now we start this hour with some tough fighting talk from the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, because he's told voters that if the Conservatives stay in power, then they will cut taxes, while the Labour Party will not.
And we're going to start with the great Chris Hope.
Chancellor, thank you for taking GB News' question. You say you want to cut taxes. You've been saying that for months. But you have cut national insurance twice, £900 off the average person tax bill. But you've frozen tax thresholds and the polls aren't shifting. Why not? Is it you, your party, the country wants to change, possibly? And just secondly, do you want a second budget pre-election to cut taxes?
It is, not a great insight, with great respect to you, Chris, to say that putting up taxes, as I had to do in the autumn statement in 22, is not popular. But it was the right thing to do for the economy. And we can see today, when the IMF are saying that our economy will grow faster than any major European country over the next 6 years, that those decisions have been the right ones. They paid off. And that's why we took them. But now we're in an election year. And if people are worried about tax, then I would just say one very simple thing. There is a choice. The Labour government, the Labour Party does not want, and a future Labour government does not want, to cut the tax burden. A future Conservative government will. That is the big choice in British politics. And our argument is, this isn't just about family budgets. We understand how important those are when it comes to cost of living pressures. Our argument is, this is about the future growth of the economy, because we can see, looking around the world, that more lightly taxed economies have more dynamic private sectors, they grow faster, and in the end that is more money for precious public services like the NHS.
That was Jeremy Hunt, and as you'd expect, the Labour Party weren't at all impressed with his comments. And check out what the Shadow Financial Secretary to the Treasury, James Murray, had to say.
I think, frankly, this is a desperate attempt to distract by Jeremy Hunt from the Conservatives' record in office. We know the tax burden is set to be the highest in 70 years. The average household is going to be £870 worse off. And frankly, they're probably trying to distract from their own £46 billion unfunded commitment to abolish national insurance. I think all this underscores is it's time for change and it's time for a general election.
Well, I'm now joined in our studio by our political editor, the great Christopher Hope. He tried to flatter you there, but you didn't take any of it. In fact, you put the boot in. Is it you? Is it your party? You said to him, here's my point. His bedside manner during turbulent times, quite calming, quite soothing, a steady hand on the rudder. Isn't it now time, though, to go into attack mode? Get on a front foot. Labour put their pledges out yesterday. Shoot them down in flames and offer us a juicy tax cut.
In many ways, Jeremy Hunt was the accidental dental chancellor. He was with his children, I think, on the way back from Brussels on a half-term holiday when he got the phone call from Liz Truss saying you're going to replace Kwasi Kwarteng as the chancellor, when Rishi Sunak came in. There was speculation he might try and give a job to Claire Coutinho or to Mel Stride, two key allies. Instead, he carried on with Jeremy Hunt. Jeremy Hunt has this really good, calming manner, I think, for the markets in that chaos after the Truss implosion. It's very hard to replace a Chancellor because those two people, the PM and the Chancellor, must be in lockstep, and you replace a Chancellor, it draws questions about the economic strategy, and they couldn't afford to do it. Having said that, I think Jeremy Hunt is definitely a Tory who wants to cut taxes. The concern I've got, I think, for their party is that no one's listening. They cut £900 off the average tax bill, national insurance cut, hasn't affected the polls at all. I think a lot of people are looking at those issues of the frozen tax thresholds, Martin, recognise that nurses and doctors are paying 40% tax when really they shouldn't be normally, and why can't those go up? They've frozen those thresholds. It's called stealth rises that annoyed the Chancellor, but I'm afraid people are looking at what's happening to their pay packet.
And isn't that the point? You know, we've had this dreaded fiscal drag we've been talking about. As you said, people are getting dragged into higher tax brackets because their salary is going up, inflation is going up. So actually, they're not getting any better off. 14, I think, consecutive tax rises. Now, of course, he will say, well, we had the pandemic, we had the war in Ukraine, and you said he doesn't feel like we've thanked him or acknowledged that enough. Nevertheless, the pounds and the pence in your pocket are what matters. And I'm afraid all of this having a pop at Sir Keir Starmer won't cut it. Surely now, Chris Hope, it's time for a tax cut or ta-ta. Don't you think?
Well, yeah, I think he went towards that. The other part of that question we asked there for GB News is, will you have a tax-cutting budget in the autumn? He said there will be an autumn statement. He wouldn't say where it's going to be. He wants to bring down this national insurance pledge to get rid of that tax on jobs, as they call it. There is differential here between the two parties. This is Sir Keir Starmer's plans from yesterday, that My First Steps. In there, he makes very clear they want to keep taxes as low as possible. Jeremy Hunt says we're going to cut taxes. So they are offering something different, something more direct to voters. The problem is people don't feel richer. You can do one thing with national insurance, but more people, millions more, are paying the high rate of tax because they're frozen new thresholds. Deal with that, and they might start listening to you, Jeremy Hunt.
Now, Lee Anderson, in his own subtle way, he said the other day Rishi Sunak could drop £1 million down every chimney in Britain and his destiny would still be secured. He's not with the party anymore. He might say that. But do you think, as you said, is it just you? Is it just your party? A few quid here and there might not be enough now. People want radical change and nipping and tucking won't do it.
Well, if they want radical change, why is Labour not offering that? I mean, again, it was a very pedestrian offering yesterday, even on launching a new border security command, a new government body, rather than stopping the boat. It does seem to me that they're doing all they need to do and not going further than they need to do, try and generate excitement. And that's why we've got this GB News polling overnight showing that just 5% have a great deal of confidence Labour will deliver on these 5 steps. But the Tories, as I say, are miles behind the polls. According to our poll overnight, 27 points behind Labour. People are not listening to the Tory offer here, and that's the challenge they've got. They've got to get out and convince people that it's not worth taking a risk on Labour.
Is there still time? Can they just pull that ultimate, channel your Paul Daniels, channel your David Copperfield, do as a magic trick, pull the ultimate rabbit out of the hat, bang, a tax cut that's going to convince people to stick with the Tories, stick with the plan? Or do you feel it's just a forlorn hope?
It could be fallen. The tax cuts so far haven't worked. So they need some kind of big moment, but they can't spook the markets. They're getting there. I do think they finally, Martin, on all the 5 fundamentals, on falling inflation, interest rates, 2 cuts this year probably, you've got falling net migration almost certainly, maybe the boats start taking off and a growing economy. It's coming back for the Tory party. Time is on their side, but I'm not sure that people are ready to listen to them.
Is an extra factor, another fun thought, let's quickly cover off. The rich list came out.
Yes.
And it now turns out, I mean, my eyes popped out at this, that now Rishi Sunak and his wife are worth more than the king. Is that part of the issue here? People don't feel that Rishi Sunak's on their team. He's so super rich. How can he possibly understand the average working Brit when they're feeling the pinch?
We put that very question to the Prime Minister's spokesman at 11 o'clock today on behalf of GB News viewers. The numbers are this, that the king is worth £610 million, Rishi Sunak and his wife, Akshata Murty, 651 million, because not because he's earning money more as an MP or a PM, because of the stake in this Indian company called Infosys. They say to us, judge him by his actions. He's taking actions to support people, judge him by his public works, not what's in his bank account, Martin.
And that's fair enough. Nobody should be jealous of his wealth.
I'm not jealous of your wealth.
Well, it's good because I haven't got any. Chris Hope, always a pleasure. Let's swiftly move on. I'll see you again in the next hour. Cheers, mate. Now, a Palestinian student has had her visa revoked on the grounds of national security after she said that she was full of pride over Hamas's attacks on Israel on October the 7th. Now, Dana Ababu Kwama, a 19-year-old law student at the University of Manchester, made the comments at a pro-Palestine protest just a day after those attacks on October the 7th. Well, to discuss this, I'm now joined by the founder of the Oxford Institute for British Islam, Dr. Taj Harvey. Welcome to the show, Taj. Do you think this punishment was fitting? Do you think she should rightly have had her visa revoked?
No, I think it's disproportionate. I mean, listen, she made these statements apparently a day after 15 members of her family were killed, and maybe there was an emotional response. But I think what's important here is that either we have free speech in this country or we don't. You know, now she's a legal resident, she's a student, and like you and I, British citizens, she's entitled to a free speech. Maybe she was being a bit exuberant, if that's the word to use, but I don't think the revocation of her visa is a fit and proper punishment for that.
OK, let's analyse that, shall we? Hamas is a proscribed terrorist organisation. Supporting it is prohibited. I repeat her comments. We're really full of joy, full of pride at what has happened. Right. We are proud that Palestine... Hang on. We are proud that Palestinian resistance has come to this point. That was the day after rapes, tortures, murders. To side with those people, to have a visa to remain in the UK is a privilege. It's not a right. She's a Palestinian. No. We have the right, as a nation, surely, to expel people who line up with terrorists.
Right. I mean, firstly, you say how much is prescribed. Yes, it is prescribed in Britain and in some European countries. It is not prescribed anywhere else. You know, no, hang on. We need to understand this, OK? Firstly, what Israel has done successfully over the years is to label anyone against the state of Israel as a terrorist. Anyone, okay? Not just Hamas, anyone. For example, you should know, and I do, the resistance in France against the Nazis. No one called them terrorists. Not one of them.
Because you're comparing apples and pears. Dr. Taj, you're really comparing apples and pears. Let's stick on point with where we are now. Today, this instance.
With due respect, okay? We really need to look at this historically, okay? I think the comments were distasteful of hers. It shouldn't have been made, okay? Clearly, but she's a 19-year-old. Okay, I'm not excusing that, but she had lost so many members of her family, okay? Now, apparently she's finishing her studies. I think revoking the visa, interrupting her studies, I think is a over-the-top penalty. That's all I'm saying, you know?
It's over the top. Would you have the same? Would you have a similar sympathy, for example, if I don't know there'd been a terror attack against a Muslim nation and somebody had said we're really full of pride and full of joy at what those people did? Would that be okay with you then?
No, it'd be going to the extreme. No doubt about it. But I think before you and I sort of rush to judgment, this particular young person, there are, I think, some extenuating circumstances. Now, for example, if she had a track record, she's in the 30s or whatever, and she comes up all the time with these pro-Hamas statements and lauding in the killing of innocent Jews and people were raped and massacred and so forth, then that's quite a different matter. But she doesn't have that track record. She made one statement.
So the new rules there, Dr. Hodge, the new rules are you have to repeatedly side with terrorists. You have to repeatedly be anti-Semitic before you...
This is not what I'm saying, but I think you and I both know that in many cases there are extenuating circumstances. I would like to suggest that in this particular case, she should definitely have some action taken against her, but I don't think the revocation... Well, for example,
Like what?
maybe, hang on, let me finish. Maybe interrupting her studies for 6 months or something like that, okay? Or for a year, okay?
But then she'd be in the country for even longer. You postpone her study for 6 months, she'd have to stay.
There can be other sanctions, okay, other than a revocation of visa. Okay, I simply
can I just put this to you?
You need to understand that was a knee-jerk reaction. That was a knee-jerk reaction by the Home Office. And I think
a knee-jerk reaction. Okay, so I put it to you, Dr. Harji. The Home Office is allowed to make a decision on a case-by-case basis of who has the right to remain in this country. That's their job. That's what they do. In this instance, the day after the worst terrorist incident in living memory, the worst attack on Jewish people since the Holocaust, she said, we're really full of joy, full of pride at what has happened. We are proud that Palestinian resistance has come to this point, and you think that's a rush of blood to the head, an exuberant comment, and she should be just let off.
Well, yeah. I mean, if she has a,
that's what you're saying,
proven track record, okay, of being viciously anti-Semitic, being viciously, violently pro-terrorism and so forth, then clearly the penalty should be applying. But I think in this particular case, isn't there some leeway to be given? Say, listen, in this particular case, you overstepped the mark here, but we are a generous country. We are for freedom of people and expression, and you shouldn't have said this. And apparently she has now withdrawn and said, listen, she says that her statements were taken out of context. Okay.
She would say that because she was caught and she's been banged to rights, and there's been a huge backlash, and she's fearful of being kicked out of the country. So of course she's going to say that she made a mistake.
The same thing, Martin. Most politicians do exactly the same thing when they caught red-handed or their hands in the cookie jar. Okay,
I don't think any politicians, Dr. Harji, have said they were full of joy, of pride at what's happened on October 7th. That if they had, Martin, they should immediately lose their job and be kicked out of office.
If 15 members of your wider family were slaughtered, okay, by the attack on the apartment building in Gaza, I'm not sure that you would be so sanguine. Neither would I, okay, because we are humans after all. But the point is, how do we punish this young lady, 19-year-old, for finishing a law degree or whatever, and think that we've done well? In fact, we come out with egg on our face because we're supposed to be the bastion of free speech, and however, it is distasteful. There's no doubt about it. It's very distasteful. I would never sanction it. I actually condemn it. But that's good.
At least at the end of this interview, we got to the point where you did condemn her comments. That's good. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Taj Hargi, who's the founder of the Oxford Institute for British Islam. A very lively conversation. Let us know what you think out there. Please let us know. Get in touch. gbnews.com/your say on that topic. Now got some breaking news. The King, Queen and Prince of Wales will attend commemorative events in Normandy on June the 6th to mark the 81st anniversary of D-Day. Now, moving on, the Sunday Times Rich List has been released, and I'm about to speak to a man who's worth a cool 947 million quid. And I might ask him if he can lend me a tenner for a pint later on. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Gloria Di Piero. This is GB News, Britain's election channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Well, Welsh farmer Gareth Wyn-Jones is a first-language Welsh speaker and joins us now. Gareth, I mean, a lot of people will be thinking, hang on, this guy is a Welsh teacher. He speaks English. He knew what was on the parking ticket. He's just trying to make a point. He's being a prat, isn't he?
No, hey, come on, mate. I'm a first language Welsh. It's important that we watch after our language and, that everything's bilingual. For us in Wales, you wouldn't go to France and expect your ticket to be in English, would you? English is the most spoken language, but let's watch after these small languages. It's part of our cultural. So, you know what, I take my hat off to the guy. Fair play to him to go out and to fight this. But what it's done is put it onto the mainstream media, and you're talking about it, even that you're calling them that. You know, at least we're having a discussion about it, and it's putting the Welsh language in the forefront. And,
So,
you know,
Gareth, this is
speaking Welsh is important.
Yeah, so Gareth, this is a matter of principle. Is there a sense that the Welsh language is being eradicated in Wales? Is this something that the Welsh people need to rise up against?
Well, Welsh Government are trying to, you know, bring a lot more Welsh speaking into our daily life and teach people how to speak Welsh. Well, everything should be bilingual then. And I think, you know, it should start with government. So government should be putting pressure on these companies to make sure everything is bilingual. So I get behind this guy. Fair play to him. It's a good stance, and it puts it in the public eye. Let's have everything in both languages, especially Welsh, because that's my first language. And I'm
you know
not
what?
fat.
If I was Welsh, I think I would agree with you. I think I would agree with you, Gareth.
It depends if you come from Wrexham.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark Dolan, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 4:26. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Now let's bring you some breaking news now. And it's big news for Liverpool Football Club because Arne Slot has said that he will take over as Liverpool head coach next season. Slot is currently in charge of the Dutch club Feyenoord, and he will replace, of course, Jurgen Klopp, who will be leaving Liverpool after their final game of the season against Wolves this Sunday. Now, moving on, the Sunday Times Rich List is out, and there's finally some good news for Rishi Sunak, because the personal fortune of the Prime Minister and his wife surged by more than £120 million over the past year, and that means that they are now worth a cool 651 million quid. Apparently, the King's only worth a mere 650. Well, top of the list is the Hunduja family with £37.2 billion, and Sir Paul McCartney has become the first billionaire musician from the UK. Well, I'm delighted now to say that I'm joined by a man who's on that rich list, and it's Alfie Best, who's worth an estimated 947 million quid, and that's up by a little bit of change, £202 million on last year. And he joins me now, of course, from Monaco, the millionaire's playground. Alfie, a delight to have you on the show. First of all, well done, my old son. I always love it when somebody makes it. First question has got to be an obvious question. You're probably going to ask it all the time. Alfie, what's it feel like to be worth almost £1 billion?
No different than it did yesterday, to be really honest with you, but I'm pretty happy about it, obviously.
You know, when you get to like your stage of wealth, an extra 210 million quid, an extra 202 million quid, does it make any difference? I mean, how much money does one man need would be what I would ask, as having not a lot myself.
To be really honest with you, it's after a certain amount of money, it's not about how it's going to change your life, because it's not. It's actually about how you change the industry that you're in for the better. And how you change other people's lives, and how you create wealth that trickles down. You know, forgive me for saying, we all grew up playing the board game Monopoly, and it's about winning at the game, but also enjoying it. And I see business as no different. You know, it starts off extremely difficult. You know, you give blood, blisters and tears. And I like to think that I'm still doing that, even though, you know, I am where I am now. But I want everybody to be successful. Success shouldn't be just for the few. It should be for everybody.
And do you think in Britain we often hear that we have a slight envy, we go green with envy about other people's green, whereas in America, much more celebratory of success. And in fact, today there seems to be a bit of a problem that Rishi Sunak and his wife are worth more than the king. Do you think we've got a problem with other people's success in Britain? Is that a shame?
I think that's how it is now, but I don't think that's how it used to be. I think Britain is a great country, and that's why, you know, it's remembered, I'll say, as Great Britain. But we now seem to have fallen behind in that aspiration for people to do well. You know, you look at America, none of their entrepreneurs ever leave or decide to set up elsewhere. You know, they decide to grow their companies no matter what, constantly. Whereas in the UK, it seems to be a target. And the reason it's targeted is a small number of people that they see that their votes don't count. But it really will and really does affect, you know, the economy. You look at two of our greatest entrepreneurs that our country has ever produced, you know, James Dyson and Jim Radcliffe, who, you know, are staunch British through and through, who swore they would never leave. But it seems to me that, you know, you become targeted enough in the end, you go, hold on a minute, there's plenty of other places in the world that welcome wealth. And unfortunately, Britain isn't doing that at this minute in time. Unless it changes its thinking, unless we start re-embracing Great Britain that supports people for success from every creed, colour and race, not just the glass ceiling that's put there to keep people down.
Superb stuff. You know, words of wisdom. And Alfie Best, thank you so much for sharing your time and your energy and your wisdom with us. Thank you very much, Alfie Best, and have a good one. Pleasure to talk to you live there direct from Monaco. Now, there's lots more still to come between now and 5 o'clock, and I'll cross live to Middlesbrough, where a Moroccan asylum seeker has been jailed for a minimum of 45 years after killing a pensioner. But first, it's your headlines, and it's with Sam Francis.
Martin, thank you very much. Good afternoon to you. It's 4:32 exactly. The top stories from the newsroom. A teacher has been found guilty of having sex with 2 schoolboys. Rebecca Jones was convicted of 6 counts of engaging in sexual activity with a child. She was already suspended from her job and on bail for having sex with a 15-year-old when she began a sexual relationship with a second teenager aged 16 and then became pregnant. During her 2-week trial, the high school teacher told the court that she craved attention and struggled following the breakdown of a 9-year relationship, but denied the allegations against her. There are now 46 confirmed cases of cryptosporidium, according to health officials, after water supplies in Brixham in Devon were contaminated. It means cases of the diarrhoea-inducing illness have more than doubled in less than 24 hours. 16,000 homes and businesses have been told that a parasite got into water supplies after possible contamination from cow manure. An asylum seeker who murdered a 70-year-old man in what a judge described as a terrorist act has been jailed for at least 44 years. 45-year-old Ahmed Ali Alid repeatedly stabbed Terence Carney in Hartlepool town centre 8 days after the Hamas attacks in Israel. During sentencing, the judge said that his actions were in apparent revenge for the conflict in Gaza. Some sports news now, and the world #1 golfer Scottie Scheffler has described his arrest on the way to the US PGA Championships in Valhalla this morning as a big misunderstanding. The incident occurred with police who were managing traffic flow. He was later booked into jail and issued a mugshot. He was able, though, to arrive on course in time for tee-off in the second round of the event. The King will make his first trip abroad since his cancer diagnosis to mark the 80th anniversary of D-Day in France. That's just come into us from Buckingham Palace. His Majesty will be joined in Normandy by the Queen and the Prince of Wales on the 6th of June. The 75-year-old monarch will stand with World War II veterans and honour those who fought and died on the beaches of Normandy. It comes after the King returned to public duties after doctors were pleased by his response to cancer treatment. And finally, just some breaking news coming to us from Israel. At the moment, details that military forces there say they have recovered the bodies of 3 hostages that were being held by Hamas. That news comes to us just following a daily briefing from the Israeli spokesperson, Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari. We will, of course, keep across that for you and bring you any more details on that as we get it. But as I say, we're hearing that 3 hostages, their bodies have been recovered by the Israeli military forces. That's the latest from the newsroom for now. For more, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sam. Now it's time for the Great British Giveaway and your chance to enjoy a spectacular summer with an extra £20,000 tax-free cash in your bank account. Now it's our biggest cash prize of the year so far, and here's how it could all be yours.
You really could be our next big winner with an incredible £20,000 in tax-free cash to play with this summer. What would you spend that on? Well, whilst you're thinking about it, listen to some of our previous winners getting that winning phone call from us.
I'm Charles. I'm on £18,000 cash. It was just amazing, and as soon as it goes into your bank account, it just changed. It's a life-changing thing. Just go for it. It's an absolute must. You must try and go for it.
The next winning call could be answered by you. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Now, later this hour, discuss astonishing calls for Israel to be banned from world football after the Palestinian FA kicked off. But first, there's a new way to get in touch with us here at GB News, and here's Bev Turner with all of the details.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family. Simply go to gbnews.com/your say.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. Greater Manchester, a few motorway issues. Firstly, the westbound M58 closed from the M6 at 26 for Orrell through towards Bickerstaff at 3, queuing back to the M6 at Haydock. That's at the scene of a collision there. Clockwise M60 Barton to Eccles, that's junction 11 to 12. A lane shut, queues back to Carrington at junction 8. That's due to a bump as well. There's been a broken down lorry northbound up the M5 up to West Bromwich at junction 1. That's just clear. The congestion hasn't. A southbound M5, the Avonmouth Bridge, really slow going, a lane shut for a collision there. Westbound M4, junction 10 towards Reading 11, a lane shut for a breakdown, that's causing queues, and queues for a breakdown clockwise on the M25 from the M3 at 12 to Chertsey at 11 with a lane closed there. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Dubes & Co. Weekdays from 6 p.m.
Organisations, plural, because there's loads of people doing this. The organisations are charging schools to be part of this odd league table about who's trying to outdo who when it comes to who is more trans-inclusive with the kids than the next person. There's something that makes me uneasy about this.
Supposing a child comes home and says, you think, oh, I've done well today. He said, well, how have you done? He said, well, I was number one painter, or I was number one reader. No, I wasn't. I was made LGBT champion. This is a 4- and 5-year-old. Look, I can understand this, actually, as we develop into the secondary school. I can understand more debates taking place. I cannot understand why we have to thrust it at young children. And I think if you ask the parents, they'd be hostile to it. And what about the role the teacher has to play in all this?
Society has been one way, the pendulum is swinging the other way, and they're pushing it very far in order to kind of proliferate change. And this is probably the toughest period in that evolutionary process, because the LGBTQ plus community is saying that you've got to really rage against the machine to get people to listen. Because put it like this now, even this conversation, the whole country is listening, the whole world is listening. These are the kinds of eyeballs and ears they haven't had before. And there's going to be friction. There's going to be a locking of heads in the process to getting to a point where you establish a new equilibrium where they feel more incorporated. Like I've said, the greatest force of allies that the LGBTQ plus community has always had is heterosexual women. What you're moving towards now is doing things that is beginning to turn them from allies into people who feel that, oh, for you to thrive, I'm being deprived, and that's a problem. When they realize you're alienating allies, they will understand you've got to recalibrate to have that kind of understanding between both parties.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 4:41. I'm Martin Daubney and this is GB News. Now, welcome back to the show. Later on the show, I'll look ahead to a huge weekend of sport. Will Pep Guardiola and Manchester City win a record-breaking 4th Premier League title in a row? More importantly, will Nottingham Forest survive? Now, a Moroccan asylum seeker who murdered a pensioner in the street and what he said was revenge for the Israel-Hamas conflict has been jailed for life with a minimum term of 45 years. Terrorist Ahmed Alid stabbed 70-year-old Terence Carney 6 times in Hartlepool town centre early on October the 15th. That's 8 days after Hamas attacked Israel. Well, Anna Riley joins us now from Teesside Crown Court. Anna, welcome to the show. A case at the time that horrified the nation, and now justice has been served.
It certainly has, Martin. Yes, the judge in this case, Mrs Justice Chima Grubb, said that Alid had committed terrorist acts in the murder of 70-year-old Terence Carney and the attempted murder of his housemate Javid Nouri on the 15th of October last year, just 8 days on from when Hamas first attacked Israel. She told Alid that he had hoped to frighten the people of Britain and undermine the freedoms that they enjoy when he murdered Mr Carney in a terrorist attack, and said that Alid had attacked an unarmed and elderly man who was unable to defend himself. Here's what she said in court earlier.
Tried to persuade the jury that when he stabbed Mr Nouri and Mr Carney, he hadn't intended to kill them or even cause them serious harm. He pretended that the admissions and explanations he gave to the police had been mistranslated by an interpreter, and the political and religious causes he had cited were not his actual motivation. The men and women on the jury saw through these lies. The evidence against him was overwhelming. He was convicted on the 25th of April 2024 after a 2-week trial. Sentence was adjourned so that the court had the fullest information and argument before proceeding. The only sentence a court can pass for murder is life imprisonment.
Victim impact statements were also read out in court on behalf of the widow of Mr Carney, Patricia, and also Javid Nouri, the housemate of Alid. They shared a Home Office home in Hartlepool, and that's when he was attacked in the early hours of the 15th of October. The judge said that that was motivated by religion. She said that Alid had disagreements with his housemate, who was Iranian and who had converted from Islam to Christianity, and that he regarded his housemate as an apostate, and that's why he tried to kill him. In a statement from Mrs Carney, she said that she'd been with her husband Terence, who the family called Tess, for more than 50 years, and that they'd met when they were both young, and that they shared children and grandchildren. She said that she could no longer go into town because it was too painful to be near the spot where Mr Carney was murdered by Alid. She said, "From that day on, my life would be forever changed. I don't feel anything anymore." And in terms of a statement from Javid Nouri, the housemate of Alid, he said that since the attack he didn't trust anyone or anything, and that all thoughts and feelings he had of being safe in this country have gone. He said in a statement, "I would expect to be arrested and killed in my home country," that's of Iran, "for converting to Christianity, but I did not expect to be attacked in my sleep here. How is it possible for someone to destroy someone's life because of his religion?" He said that he now struggles with mental health and that he had to move cities and move away from his friends. He added, "I want to tell Ahmed, you are a weak person. Because of your religion, you attack somebody in deep sleep and an old man who struggled to walk." Now, counter-terrorism police North East have also been involved in this investigation, along with Cleveland police. They also issued a statement today, and they said, in this case, it was appropriate that the decision to declare this horrific incident is an act of terrorism, and that was made once all the evidence had been heard in court.
Thank you for that update, Anna Riley there, live from Teesside Crown Court. Thank you very much. Very harrowing case. Now, Israel's football team could be banned from world football because of the war in Gaza. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome to the latest GB News forecast from the Met Office. It's a tale of sunny spells and sharp showers for the rest of today and the next few days, in fact. Low pressure slipping away, so it's going to be less dominant across the UK, but still some instability in the air, and with warm sunshine in places, we are seeing the cloud development and the showers for many places during the rest of this afternoon and into the start of the evening. But overnight, as the temperatures tail away, we're going to see plenty of dry weather and some clear spells in the west, but cloudier skies elsewhere. And where we've got the cloud, 12 or 13 Celsius by dawn. Where we've got the clear spells, into the single figures. Many places will be dry as we start off the weekend. There'll be some sunshine around as well, but into the east of England, especially East Anglia and the far southeast, so into Kent, for example, some showery rain starting to appear, 1 or 2 showers elsewhere across the south coast. Wales, northwest England, plenty of sunshine first thing, but for northeast England as well as eastern Scotland, a lot of low cloud and mist. Northern Ireland seeing patchy cloud and mist as well. Largely dry for Scotland, some decent sunny spells in places. And as we go through the morning, actually, where we've got the layers of cloud, that will tend to break up. We're going to see some sunny spells developing, but there'll also be, once again, some shower development. Western and central Scotland seeing some sharp showers, but the majority of the showers will affect Wales and the southwest of England. And here they could be very lively with some heavy rain in places. Temperatures away from the showers and into the warm sunny spells reaching 20 to 23 Celsius. But those showers will continue to affect parts of Wales and the southwest into the evening before eventually fading away. And then into Sunday, again, warm sunny spells for many, but there will be some showers around, particularly across parts of southern England. Bye-bye.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 4:50. I'm Martin Daubney and this is GB News. Now let's get to a story that's really caught my eye today, and that's this. The country's first secure school is opening in Kent. Its aim is to help rehabilitate serious young offenders, what the government says will be rigorous education and training. And let's see what Emma and Matthew make of this. I'm rejoined by my pal, of course, Matthew Lozer and Emma Wolfe. Emma, I'll start with you this time. I think this sounds like a brilliant idea. It's basically taking young offenders who've strayed into gangs and they've been involved in knife crime, and by giving some tough love, they're going to try and turn their lives around. Tell me more.
Absolutely. Give them education, give them training, give them a sense of purpose and give them activity. Most gang and knife crime comes from boredom, from apathy, from a lack of activity, from a lack of anything better to do, frankly. This is expensive. Rehabilitation is expensive. I think it's going to be around $250,000 per young person. But I say give them a chance. Not 10 chances, not 20 chances. Give young people a chance. Prisons aren't working. Our prisons are overflowing in this country. Why are our prisons overflowing? Because people go in, they become more criminal, they become more criminalised, they come out, they reoffend, they reoffend. We're in this kind of spiralling situation of crime, build more prisons, more crime. Absolutely, give young offenders who usually come from disadvantaged backgrounds, have nothing else to do, give them a chance.
And they're claiming, Matthew, that they can, using this type of approach, they can see an 82% drop in the number of young offenders in youth custody. So rather than banging them up, rather than sort of throwing away the key, they're intervening. Is it a bit too soft and fluffy, though? Some people might not quite like this.
No, I know some people will kind of moan that it sounds soft and fluffy, but I don't think it's going to. By the look of it, it doesn't look soft and fluffy, at all. It looks pretty rigorous, and it's hugely expensive, of course, to put somebody into the youth offending system, which is also the young offenders institutions are pretty grim. Over the years, the reports on all of them and the issues there are even more and even greater than in our adult prisons. So I think it sounds a great idea. It's been run by Oasis, which is this a charity started by Steve Chalk, used to be the GMTV vicar for many years, and he runs the schools next to my house, and I can tell you they're pretty rigorous with the kids outside those schools who are just normal kids. So I think, and the other thing, of course, is it's an experiment, and we will be able to see the results. So it can be very carefully monitored in terms of where people come out and what they go on to, because the key thing is stopping people reoffending.
As you say, it's expensive, small numbers, about 50 kids at any one time, one-on-one learning. My mum used to be a family liaison officer. You know, she worked in some of the most depraved homes in Nottinghamshire, keeping young boys out of jail, trying to just engage them in some way. It does work.
It does work.
But it's expensive.
Yeah, it's expensive, but it's so much less expensive than a life of crime.
It saves money in the long run, doesn't it?
In terms of money, but also in terms of social, you know, the misery and the, you know, the crime that is perpetuated by people. Start early and you can turn people's lives around.
And ultimately, it's, of course, what the justice system is meant to be about, because it protects the public if reoffending's down, and obviously it gives the individuals concerned a second chance.
You know, I spent a bit of time in jails, not as an inmate.
I was getting excited for a minute there, Martin. There was a revelation about to come.
But speaking to offenders, and you know what? The longer that you work in a prison, the wardens tell me the more liberal they get, because they say this thing that these kids. They've only ever understood chaos. And if you give them some love, some attention, they can be turned around.
Yeah, but also discipline, boundaries, education and training. That literally is all that children and young people need. And these are children, they are. And that's why they're, they're not being criminals for fun. They're doing it because they have nothing better to do. And they fall into a life of crime, and that is expensive.
Second chances are absolutely vital, because otherwise, for the sake of, making people feel better that it's a tough approach by chucking them in young offenders institutions, you're actually producing hardened criminals for the rest of their lives, and which none of us want to see, because we're the people who pay the victim's price as victims.
Okay, Matthew and Emma, thank you very much. It's been a delight to have a panel. No doubt you out there might complain. We've all gone a bit hug-a-hoodie. But anyway, thank you very much for your time. Always a delight. Now, the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, has promised that a future Conservative government would cut taxes. Well, when? And it's criticised Labour's economic plans. We'll have the full analysis of that. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's News Channel. Now it's your weather, and it's Aidan McGibbon.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to the latest GB News forecast from the Met Office. It's a tale of sunny spells and sharp showers for the rest of today and the next few days, in fact. Low pressure slipping away, so it's going to be less dominant across the UK, but still some instability in the air, and with warm sunshine in places, we are seeing the cloud development and the showers for many places during the rest of this afternoon and into the start of the evening. But overnight, as the temperatures tail away, we're going to see plenty of dry weather and some clear spells in the west, but cloudier skies elsewhere. And where we've got the cloud, 12 or 13 Celsius by dawn. Where we've got the clear spells, into the single figures. Many places will be dry as we start off the weekend. There'll be some sunshine around as well, but into the east of England, especially East Anglia and the far southeast, so into Kent, for example, some showery rain starting to appear, 1 or 2 showers elsewhere across the south coast. Wales, northwest England, plenty of sunshine first thing, but for northeast England as well as eastern Scotland, a lot of low cloud and mist. Northern Ireland seeing patchy cloud and mist as well. Largely dry for Scotland, some decent sunny spells in places. And as we go through the morning, actually, where we've got the layers of cloud, that will tend to break up. We're going to see some sunny spells developing, but there'll also be, once again, some shower development. Western and central Scotland seeing some sharp showers, but the majority of the showers will affect Wales and the southwest of England. And here, they could be very lively with some heavy rain in places. Temperatures away from the showers and into the warm sunny spells reaching 20 to 23 Celsius. But those showers will continue to affect parts of Wales and the southwest into the evening before eventually fading away. And then into Sunday, again, warm sunny spells for many, but there will be some showers around, particularly across parts of southern England. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. All the traffic being held for the M18 at the moment in both directions between Junction 2 for the A1M and Junction 3 for St Catherine's. There's a police incident there, so queuing either side, no way through at the moment. Westbound M58 still shut from the Orrell interchange. That's from the M6 towards Bickerstaff Junction 3 and queuing indeed slow both ways because of a westbound collision. The southbound Avonmouth Bridge northwest of Bristol, the M5, long queue still at the scene of a bump there, so that's causing delays. Anti-clockwise, the M25 from Chertsey at 11 towards the M3 Junction 12's queuing. The earlier breakdown's gone, but we're still seeing a fair amount of queues on the cameras and long queues too on the clockwise M25 at the Worsley interchange at 10. The earlier bump in the roadworks. That's cleared, but of course delays building. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
You really could be our next big winner with an incredible £20,000 in tax-free cash to play with this summer. What would you spend that on? Well, whilst you're thinking about it, listen to some of our previous winners getting that winning phone call from us.
I'm Charles. I'm on £18,000 cash. It was just amazing, and as soon as it goes into your bank account, it just changed. It's a life-changing thing. Just go for it. It's an absolute You must try and go for it.
The next winning call could be answered by you. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
A very good afternoon to you and a happy Friday. It's 5 p.m. Welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News, and we're broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster all across the UK. This afternoon, responding to Sir Keir Starmer's six-step plan, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Jeremy Hunt, today roared, Starmer will help himself to your family's wallet. He also accused Labour of fake news by scaring pensioners over national insurance reform. And for good measure, he called Angela Rayner's workers' rights reforms an unmitigated tragedy. But can the Tories offer voters a desperately needed tax cut? And soon I'll be joined by an Irish political party leader to hear an extraordinary story where locals in Clonmel convinced builders building a huge refugee camp for asylum seekers to abandon the project and down tools after listening to their community concerns. This is coming as reports suggest that multiple fires were started near a 200-year-old oak tree near the protesters' camp. And are the Netherlands on the verge of a row with the European Union? Well, right-wing Dutch politician Geert Wilders outlines a coalition agreement which will bring in the country's strictest ever asylum policy. And guess what? Brussels don't like it up them. Well, was the show always a delight to have your company. A huge amount to get through in the next hour. Let's start with this extraordinary scene from Ireland. The situation over there has been on a knife edge for many, many months now. We're seeing riots breaking out in Dublin. Police pepper spraying locals objecting to refugee camps coming up all over their communities. And today we've got an extraordinary story of a refugee centre being built in the countryside. Locals persuaded builders to down tools and stop building. An extraordinary story. We'll have the full inside detail on that, plus a huge debate. The Palestinian FA have kicked off and they want Israel kicked out of world football. Can you believe that? We're discussing all of that in the next hour. Send your views, gbnews.com/you'll say. But now it's your headlines with Sam Francis.
Martin, thank you very much. Good afternoon to you. It's just after 5 o'clock. A look at the top stories from the newsroom this hour. A teacher found guilty of having sex with two schoolboys has been described as a predator. 30-year-old Rebecca Jones was convicted of 6 counts of engaging in sexual activity with a child. She denied having sex with one schoolboy and claimed a relationship with a second teenager began only once he had left school and after she had been sacked. During her 2-week trial, the high school teacher told the court that she craved attention and struggled following the breakdown of a 9-year relationship. There are now 46 confirmed cases of cryptosporidium, according to health officials. That's after water supplies in Brixham in Devon were contaminated. It means cases of the diarrhoea-inducing illness have more than doubled in less than 24 hours. 16,000 homes and businesses have been told that a parasite got into their water supplies after possible contamination from cow manure. An asylum seeker who murdered a 70-year-old man in what a judge described as a terrorist act has been jailed today for at least 44 years. 45-year-old Ahmed Ali Alid repeatedly stabbed Terence Carney in Hartlepool town centre last year, 8 days after the Hamas attacks in Israel. During sentencing, the judge said his actions were an apparent revenge for the conflict in Gaza. The Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, has declined to give a cast-iron guarantee of tax cuts, but insists the tax burden will go down under a future Conservative government. He warns, though, that Labour will be forced to raise taxes to pay for their spending pledges, as he reiterated his own commitment to eliminating national insurance. Speaking in London this morning, the Chancellor accused his shadow, Rachel Reeves, of resorting to playground politics with her criticism of the high levels of tax on UK households.
When it comes to Labour policies on jobs, welfare reform and tax, the difference, if they are elected, will be profound and damaging for every family in the country. Labour like to criticise recent tax rises, thinking people don't know what caused them: the furlough scheme, the energy price guarantee and billions of pounds in cost of living support. But Labour supported those policies, which is why it is playground politics to use those tax rises to distract debate from the biggest divide in British politics today: what happens to the tax burden next?
Jeremy Hunt there speaking earlier this morning. Well, let's just quickly turn to the latest developments coming to us from that breaking news in Israel, where we understand that military forces there have now recovered the bodies of 3 hostages recovered by the Israeli forces. They were held by Hamas. The 3 hostages, we understand, include the body of Shani Luke, a 22-year-old German-Israeli woman. A photograph of her twisted body on the back of a pickup truck circulated across the world following the 7th of October attacks. And the 2 other hostages have been identified as Amit Buskila and Itzhak Gelrenter. It's understood those 3 hostages were killed by Hamas at the Nova Music Festival, and their bodies were then taken to Gaza. Back here in the UK, hundreds of Border Force officers at Heathrow Airport are set to strike at the end of half-term in a row over their rotas. 500 members of the PCS union will walk out for 3 days, starting on the 31st of May. It's expected their strike action will disrupt passport checks for travellers coming into the UK. 2 police officers who took a 2-hour meal break for a kebab on the night of the Manchester Arena attack have been handed final written warnings today. Their absence meant there were no officers patrolling the area when Salman Abedi made his final approach, where he then detonated his explosive. The police watchdog is also recommending that British Transport Police apologise to the families of the victims. The world #1 golfer Scottie Scheffler has described his arrest on the way to the US PGA Championships in Valhalla this morning as a big misunderstanding following what he described as a chaotic situation. The incident occurred with police who were managing traffic flow. He was later booked into jail and his mugshot was taken. He was, though, able to arrive on course in time to tee off in the second round of the event. And finally, some royal news. We've heard that the King, the Queen and Prince William will attend ceremonies in France next month to mark the 80th anniversary of the D-Day landings. His Majesty and Queen Camilla will join a commemorative event at the British Normandy Memorial, while Prince of Wales will attend a separate Canadian ceremony. Buckingham Palace says the Princess of Wales, though, is not expected to travel to France. That visit comes after the King returned to public duties, as doctors say they're pleased by his response to cancer treatment. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts. Just scan the QR code on your screen or go to our website, gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sam. Now, we've got absolutely loads to get through this hour, so let's get cracking. And the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, has drawn the battle lines ahead of the general election. He's told voters that if the Conservatives stay in power, they will cut taxes, while the Labour Party will not.
And we're going to start with the great Chris Hope.
Chancellor, thank you for taking GB News' question. You say you want to cut taxes. You've been saying that for months. But you have cut national insurance twice, £900 off the average person tax bill. But you've frozen tax thresholds, and the polls aren't shifting. Why not? Is it you, your party, the country wants to change, possibly? And just secondly, do you want a second budget pre-election to cut taxes?
It is, not a great insight, with great respect to you, Chris, to say that putting up taxes, as I had to do in the autumn statement in 22, is not popular. But it was the right thing to do for the economy. And we can see today, when the IMF are saying that our economy will grow faster than any major European country over the next 6 years, that those decisions have been the right ones. They paid off. And that's why we took them. But now we're in an election year. And if people are worried about tax, then I would just say one very simple thing. There is a choice. The Labour government, the Labour Party does not want, and a future Labour government does not want, to cut the tax burden. A future Conservative government will. That is the big choice in British politics. And our argument is, this isn't just about family budgets. We understand how important those are when it comes to cost of living pressures. Our argument is, this is about the future growth of the economy, because we can see, looking around the world, that more lightly taxed economies have more dynamic private sectors, they grow faster, and in the end that is more money for precious public services like the NHS.
Now, as you'd expect, the Labour Party weren't impressed at all with Jeremy Hunt's comments. And check out what the Shadow Financial Secretary to the Treasury, James Murray, had to say.
I think, frankly, this is a desperate attempt to distract by Jeremy Hunt from the Conservatives' record in office. We know the tax burden is set to be the highest in 70 years. The average household is going to be £870 worse off. And frankly, they're probably trying to distract from their own £46 billion unfunded commitment to abolish national insurance. I think all this underscores is it's time for change and it's time for a general election.
I'm joined in the studio now by our political editor, Christopher Hope, and I'm also joined down the line by the Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Ben Habib, and in the studio, the former Labour advisor, Matthew Lazar. Now then, let's start, though, in the studio with you, Chris Hope. So, Chris, we've heard a lot of talk from both sides. Yesterday, Sir Keir Starmer laid out his 6 steps, and then today, Jeremy Hunt has blasted back. The big question is anybody listening?
Yeah, very briefly, yesterday, Keir Starmer's 6 steps here. Step 1 talked about ensuring that taxes are kept as low as possible. The Tories see a chance here, and they pulled out all sorts of research here showing how Labour will have to put taxes up to pay for its policy portfolio. The problem the Tories have got is people aren't listening to them. They've cut taxes twice, big time, on national insurance, £900 off the average bill. So in this, after the most recent one in April, but the polls aren't moving. That's a problem, I think, which Jeremy Hunt has got. Equally, there's cynicism amongst voters. We have polling out overnight from people polling, found that just 5% think that Keir Starmer can deliver his first step. So there's a general mistrust of what politicians say. The problem that the Tories have got is they are miles behind in the polls and the public ain't listening.
OK, now let's have a taxation tear-up. And as I said, I'm joined by the Deputy Leader of the Reform Party, Ben Habib, and in the studio also by the former Labour advisor, Matthew Lazar. Ben Habib, let's start with you. You're no fan of the Conservatives Party taxation policy. You've been saying for too long they're the highest taxation policy since World War II. A lot of people think we voted for the Conservatives and we got Corbynism. Were you impressed by anything that Jeremy Hunt said today?
Well, I have to just endorse what Chris said. Frankly, I've lost interest in listening to what Jeremy Hunt has to say, because whatever he says, if it's optimistic, it never transpires to bear any form in reality. And if it's pessimistic, it's not worth listening to anyway. But let's just deal in some facts over here. When the Conservatives came to office in 2010, national debt was about $850 billion. It's gone up by $1.3 trillion since then. It's now over $2 trillion, nearly 100% of GDP. They make a virtue of fiscal probity, but that is a complete lax approach to managing the government's finances. And they've done that at the same time as raising taxes, as you yourself said, Martin, to levels that they haven't seen since World War II. And last time I saw, we haven't had a world war. And this notion, Chris, forgive me for contradicting you, but this notion that the 2% reduction in national insurance is a massive tax cut is frankly not accurate. More people are being sucked into the higher levels of tax as a result of the freezing of the thresholds than they are, and more taxes being paid as a result than they are saving in national insurance. What we've got with the Conservative government is a government that has forgotten about energy security. So it's got very high costs of energy now in the United Kingdom, a government that is intent on delivering net zero, which by its own Treasury's estimates is going to cost the Treasury £50 billion a year. That dwarfs all the kind of attacks that Jeremy Hunt was making on Labour's spending plans. A government that, having bailed out the banks, is paying the banks £30 to £40 billion a year of interest on the cash that they themselves created for the banks. This is an unknown fact generally in the media and in the public, but 30 to 40 billion pounds of taxpayers' money is going into the banks every year. Sorry, you lost me.
Ben, we're listening to you attack other parties, but what would you do? What would Reform UK do? You're polling at 14 points in the polls, Lib Dems on 9. You've got a chance to win MPs. If you have a chance to set the fiscal policy, what on earth would you do?
Well, first of all, we wouldn't be paying banks 30 to 40 billion pounds a year on cash that was created to bail them out of the problems into which they got themselves. That's a big saving. We would ditch net zero. That would save 50 billion a year. We would stop the boats, and at the moment we're spending 5 to 6 billion pounds per annum on the boats and rising on housing, caring for, and all of that with illegal migrants.
But you can't just say slogans. You can't just say slogans and stop the boats.
Well,
yes, you are. How do you do these things?
Chris, I've just given you, stop paying money on banks' cash. That's 30 to 40 billion a year. Ditch net zero. That's 50 billion a year. That's 90 billion a year saving before I've even started in government. These people couldn't manage a booze up in a brewery. That's the problem. They're intent on taxing and spending. The Conservative government is not about the promotion of the private sector or the individual or the working or middle classes. They've taxed all of that to the hilt. And Boris Johnson himself is famously said, F business. I can't say we haven't passed the watershed yet. But he said, F business. That's the attitude of the Conservative government.
Yeah, thankfully, Ben, that's not the attitude of Labour now. And we've seen
I've just got one more thing to say.
Let Matthew have a go. You've been going for quite a while. Let Matthew get a word in. So what we've seen is Keir Starmer resetting Labour's relationship with business. I mean, Ben, I agree with your analysis about the fact that the Tories have got more front than Blackpool in claiming that they're the party, as my nan used to say, claiming that they're the party who, claiming that other parties are going to put taxes up when we've had taxes at a record high now for several years of this government. But I think the problem is all the parties need to be realistic with the British people about what's coming up. I mean, the Office of Budget Responsibility has called it fiscal fiction, as people are trying to pretend that the £20 billion bill for the blood contamination scandal, the multi-billion pound bill for the post office compensation, these big bills are going to be coming in, and if any party claims it's going to be able to cut taxes in the short term, that's simply not true, which is why Keir Starmer yesterday was absolutely clear that he wants to cut taxes for working families, but it's simply not going to happen in the short term because government has got too many bills to pay.
But both the Conservative Party and the Labour Party are intent on the economic emasculation of the United Kingdom through net zero. It's got to be ditched. The Conservative government signed the North Sea transition deal in March 2021, eschewing North Sea gas in favour of importing import gas, which was fracked in the US. We've got to get real. We can't go on burdening the working and middle classes through the imposition of everlasting.
So why we need to get those green jobs and win Labour's Green New Deal will make sure those green jobs are in Britain. We can't turn the tide on where energy is going.
Either Ben Habib's really good at holding a position for a minute, or someone's pulled the plug. We'll just drop back into the studio, gentlemen. We seem to have lost Ben Habib there. So you were saying about Ben had some great ideas, but can we afford any of them? I mean, the problem is the biscuit tin is completely empty.
He says stop the boats and things. What's the frustrating thing is how. I think the Labour's idea here for a new border security command is another government body. To be fair, the Tory party, they are looking at the outcome, stop the boats, but whether the Rwanda plan works, we don't know. I'm not sure what the plan is from the Reform UK party. They can't send them back to the EU because there's no returns deal. So the problems which is facing all the main parties will affect Reform UK if they're in power.
Absolutely. I mean, I think and that's one of the things we've said. There's that document that was launched yesterday. Keir Starmer's calling it My First Steps because he's not promising the earth. He's not saying he can wave a magic wand and fix the country overnight. But what he is saying is there are concrete steps you can take in a range of policy areas that will make a real difference in the direction of travel.
He's not promising the earth. He's not promising any kind of sunny up plans here. He's promising, frankly, quite boring things a Tory government might try and do.
I think we do have Ben Habib back. Ben, can you rejoin us live and direct from Belfast? Are you there, Captain?
I'm sorry to say that both the Labour Party and the Conservative Party have got the wrong policies. If you're obsessed with net zero, you can't cut taxes because, as I said, by their own estimates, it's going to cost £50 billion a year. And by the way, Chris, yes, you can stop the boats. You get a border force that will actually do its job. The Belgians do it. They've developed a dedicated border force which uses drones, sensors, barriers. They use drones, sensors and barriers, and they use high-speed boats to intercept dinghies coming off their shore, and 92% reduction in launches of dinghies from Belgian shores. You can do it. What we need is a government with some common sense and some political will to actually deliver what's needed for the British people.
That's why Labour's plan is to use anti-terror laws against the gangs, which is exactly what the Belgians have been doing.
Labour's got absolutely no idea what it's seeking to do. It's all smoke and mirrors. Labour is saying it's going to bring together the MI5, Crown Prosecution Service, the Immigration Service, and National Crime Agency. All of them are domestic bodies. None of them have a right to go into...
a new cross-border police unit as well, and greater cooperation across Europe. Ben, and that's what we need. And the Tories could use the anti-terror legislation straight away, and they won't.
Nonsense. You're talking nonsense. The idea that the people smuggling gangs could be broken is garbage, because if they could be broken, the Europeans would have broken them. That's not where the problem is. The problem is countries across Europe, including the United Kingdom, have lost the political will and the understanding that borders must be enforced. It's taken thousands of years for these borders to be established. They exist to protect civil society in the United Kingdom, France, Germany, Italy, and elsewhere. And our political leaders are so hijacked by the global agenda that they haven't got the guts, courage, and what's required to protect the people of their own countries. That's what's going on here. We've got to face up to reality at some point.
OK, Ben, one of the final word back in the studio here with our political editor, Chris Hope.
Well, yeah, Ben, I was reflecting there on the comments. You're almost you're offering a kind of more extreme version of what the government's trying to do at the moment. You heard the offer from Jacob Rees-Mogg earlier this week. Would you come back inside the Tory party and try and stop what you will do, which is probably bequeath some form of power to the Labour Party?
Well, the Labour Party is going to win this election, whatever Reform UK does. But the problem with the Conservative Party is you vote Conservative, you get Labour policies. You vote Labour, you get even worse Labour policies. What we need is a 180-degree change in direction. And of course, I don't want to be in politics, Chris. I do not want to be in politics. I'm in politics.
You do.
No, I do not. I do not. I'm in politics because the Conservative Party has driven this country to the precipice of disaster, and we've got to reverse away from it. And the problem with the Conservative Party, I love Jacob Rees-Mogg, love Suella, love Pretty, love a whole load of them. But the problem with the Conservative Party is the one nation load of parliamentarians and the executive and CCHQ, who are basically globalists and, in my view, anti-British interests, anti the British people.
We'll leave it there. Ben Habib, live and direct from Northern Ireland. Wow, you've been in Belfast 5 minutes. You've certainly channelled the Belfast spirit. Ben Habib, thank you very much. And also, of course, Matthew Lawes in the studio with Chris Hope. Superb debate. I hope you enjoyed that at home as much as I did here. Now, moving on, locals in the Irish town of Clonmel are fighting back against the construction of a migrant centre. Fantastic story. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the quaint Derbyshire village of Sudbury, there's a storm brewing between the local football club and the National Trust. This grass field might seem unremarkable, but for hundreds of years it's been part of the Sudbury Hall estate, playing host to the village football and cricket matches. Now the National Trust are planning to put an end to that tradition in the name of biodiversity, with plans for trees and plants where the football club play. Some worry it breaks a memorandum of wishes from the late Lord Vernon, whose family have lived here since 1660. Manager of Sudbury FC Tom Crutchley says he's upset at the decision.
Naturally disappointed. We've been here, this is our 9th year. We've put a lot of effort into here to keep playing, to maintain it. I'm from the village originally, so personally it was it is very upsetting.
MP for Derbyshire Dale Sarah Dines says the National Trust aren't respecting the history of the site.
I feel they're trampling over the wishes of historic owners who gave up this wonderful site for the nation. And for over 100 years people have played football and cricket here. It's incredibly sad. Incredibly sad, and it's against the wishes of a lot of people locally who've written to me from the village.
Sudbury Hall lives under the branding of the Children's Country House, a decision which Dines says is disrespectful to the history of the estate.
I mean, this is fake to make it into a children's theme park. It's almost a reimagining, and in fact that's the very words it says on their website. The house is reopened, it's been reimagined. I don't want our heritage to be reimagined. I think the National Trust has been captured by people who have different ideas than most people in this country.
Whilst the public will still be able to roam these historic grounds, the village feels like a legacy is being snatched away. Jack Carson, GB News, Sudbury.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
And this report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 5:26. I'm Martin Daubney and this is GB News. Now, is the Netherlands on the verge of a huge row with the European Union? Well, after 6 months of political wrangling, right-wing Dutch politician Geert Wilders has outlined a coalition agreement. And as the UK government attempts to deter asylum seekers, parts of Ireland are being turned into refugee camps and migrant centres. And in one area, in Clonmel, reports suggest that multiple fires were started near a 200-year-old tree, including the protesters' camp. Now, locals in Clonmel say they've convinced builders who are building a huge refugee camp for asylum seekers to down tools and abandon the project after listening to local concerns. Well, joining me now to discuss this is the president of the Irish Freedom Party, Herman Kelly. Herman, welcome to the show. Always a pleasure. Talk us through this story in Clonmel. We've seen a huge amount of resistance in Ireland in all sorts of ways at these camps, but this is an extraordinary story. Fill us in.
Yeah, well, local people, when they heard the story about basically a migrant camp or a new migrant city being placed there by the central government, they went and
we're talking about ordinary mothers and parents. One of our candidates, Martin Murphy, who's from the area, was there. He basically went and pleaded with the workers. They explained, look, guys, a large number of these unvetted males who are coming into the country, like everywhere across Europe, you get large numbers of unvetted males. You're going to have crime. So they expressed their worries about the increase in crime, sexual assault, etc., that could be possible with the influx of so many unknown people. And certainly the local Irish guys, they decided of their own free will that they would down tools, and I think they listened to the concerns. Now, at the same time, foreign workers there are still working, and they're still with the help of the Gardaí. They're still present on the site. So it's not a done deal yet. But it's very good, and it has happened recently that Irish men, when hearing the concerns of local people, have stopped building these migrant centres, and they've down tools and off they've gone. So that's a good sign as well. And isn't it funny? They were chopping down a 200-year tree. The Green Party are part of the government here. Talk about ecology, but I don't see what's ecological and green about importing a huge number of migrants from poor countries to a country like Ireland, and where they'd have higher emissions and all this kind of stuff.
Now, Herman, what would you say?
I'm a great believer in the carbon dioxide is a poison.
Yeah, but Herman, what would you say to people who say, Ireland is a nation of immigrants, these kind of tactics, they look a bit hectoring, they look a bit bullying. Are you scaring these workers away, or are they actually going of their own volition?
Well, you've heard the story about the 3 children who were stabbed in the neck in central Dublin in November. There's been a rash of attempted child abductions in Ireland in the last 6 weeks. I think there's been 5 in total so far. Child abductions, this is something which is virtually unheard of in Ireland. And parents are shocked, and they're very concerned. And I see there's a poll in the Irish Times today that the biggest concern that people have at the moment is actually that of immigration. There's not only the financial cost, but also the huge security cost that people have to pay. So, and TDs and MEP candidates are getting it in the neck from people going on the doors, because the European and local election is on June the 7th. I'm a candidate myself. And people are getting it in the neck from local people who are hearing people's worries about what's going on. And the thing is, so many of our young people, because these people have come in, they are a demand on accommodation. Our own Irish young people can't get a house or find an apartment, so they're emigrating to Australia and Canada. Now, good for us.
Yeah. OK, thank you for that update on the situation in Clonmel. As president of the Irish Freedom Party, Herman Kelly, it's always a delight to have you on GB News. Thank you very much. Now, moving on, there's lots more still to come between now and 6 o'clock, and it's a huge weekend of sport ahead. Of course, Tyson Fury is taking on Usyk, each one with a chance to make heavyweight boxing history. And of course, there's a turn of football. But first, it's your headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good evening to you. It's just after 5:30. The top story from the newsroom tonight. The Israeli military says the body of a young woman whose twisted remains were photographed on the back of a pickup truck is among 3 hostages found dead in Gaza. Shani Louk was taken by Hamas from the Nova Music Festival after the 7th of October attacks. The 2 other hostages recovered have been named as Amit Buskila and Yitzhak Gelementa, who were at the same festival. Here, a terrorist who murdered a 70-year-old man in Hartlepool and said he did it for the people of Gaza has been sentenced to at least 44 years in jail. 45-year-old Ahmed Ali Alid is an asylum seeker who claimed to be from Morocco. The court heard today he also tried to kill his housemate before murdering Terence Carney. During sentencing, the judge said his actions were in revenge for the Israel-Hamas conflict. A teacher found guilty of having sex with 2 schoolboys has been described as a predator. 30-year-old Rebecca Jones was convicted of 6 counts of engaging in sexual activity with a child. She denied having sex with 1 schoolboy and claimed the relationship with a second teenager began only once he had left school and after she had been sacked. There are now 46 confirmed cases of cryptosporidium, according to health officials, after water supplies in Brixham in Devon were contaminated. It means cases of the diarrhoea-inducing illness have more than doubled in less than 24 hours. 16,000 homes and businesses have been told that a parasite got into water supplies after possible contamination from cow manure. And the King and Queen and the Prince of Wales will attend ceremonies in France next month to mark the 80th anniversary of the D-Day landings. His Majesty and Queen Camilla will join a commemorative event at the British Normandy Memorial, while Prince William will attend a separate Canadian ceremony. It comes after the King returned to public duties as doctors were pleased by his response to cancer treatment. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts. Just scan the QR code there on your screen, or if you're listening on radio, go to our website, gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sam. Now there's still plenty of time to win our biggest cash prize of the year so far, a whopping £20,000 tax-free. Now imagine having all of that money in your bank account this summer. Well, you've got to be in it to win it, and here's how you could bag the lot.
Don't miss your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far. A totally terrific £20,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer spectacular. You could use that cash to splash out on a holiday, make the garden glam, buy a new car, or just save it for a rainy day. Whatever you'd spend £20,000 on, make sure you don't miss the chance to make it yours. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Fill your boots. Now there's a brand new way to get in touch with us here at GB News, and here's Bev Turner with all of the details.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family. Simply go to gbnews.com/yoursay.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Gary King. In West Sussex, the northbound M23 has a lane closed and queues at the moment following a breakdown between junction 9 at Gatwick Airport and the M25 interchange. Leicestershire, northbound M1, there's a lane closed and delays after an accident between junction 23A at Derby and 24 at Nottingham South. In Staffordshire, the southbound M6 has a lane closed following a breakdown. It's between junction 14 at Stafford North and 13 at Stafford South. Problems in Greater Manchester. The westbound M58 is currently closed. Long delays after an accident between the M6 interchange and junction 3 at Bickerstaff. And in South Yorkshire, the M18 had long delays after an earlier police investigation around junction 2 at the A1M. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Prince Harry, remember him? He appears to have fully turned his back on the UK as he listed his primary residence as the United States for the very first time in papers published yesterday. So interestingly, Harry listed the date on the formal US residency forms as the 29th of June 2023, last year. So that was the very same day he was kicked out of Frogmore Cottage in Great Windsor Park by his dad, the King. Charlotte, thank you for joining me.
Okay.
Are we just putting two and two together here with the significance of this date? Because there were stories during the rounds today that Harry chose that date specifically because he was so hurt about being booted out of Frogmore by his dad.
Yeah, I mean, to me it feels like he's trolling his dad a bit, because he could have said that he's been a US resident since 2020 when he quit the UK and moved to the States, but instead he chose the exact day that his dad kicked him out of Frogmore. But the reason his dad kicked him out of Frogmore was because he'd slagged off Camilla in Spare. And, you know, and his dad, apparently it was a really difficult decision for Charles, because, of course, no dad wants to kick their son out of their home. But he went beyond the pale. So Charles took the difficult decision to say, look, Frogmore's been empty for years anyway. We've spent £2.4 million doing it up for you. And now you've, you know, insulted our family in your book, Spare. Why is he so hung up on Frogmore? Because this is the country he was desperate to get away from. This is a house he didn't particularly want to live in and, in fact, didn't live in.
Well, he was forced, by the way, to pay £2.5 million to fund the renovations after it all kicked off. I mean, would that have anything to do with...
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that sort of galvanised his anger towards the whole situation. He thought he was getting a fantastic freebie. And there was, you know, there were a few reports at the time that Meghan actually thought she was moving into Frogmore House, which is a much grander property. And she sort of felt a bit sort of tricked or confused and hadn't quite realised it was actually a cottage, which is only a mere, I think it was only a mere 8 bedrooms.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me. My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 5:39. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Now to our next story. Could the Netherlands be on the verge of a massive row with the European Union? Well, after 6 months of political wrangling, right-wing Dutch politician Geert Wilders has outlined a coalition agreement which will bring in the country's strictest ever asylum policy. But the European Union has said it won't let the Netherlands opt out of the EU rules on the issue, raising the prospect of an incoming huge confrontation between Brussels and Amsterdam. Well, to discuss this, I'm now joined by Peter Klepp, who's the editor-in-chief of the Brussels Report. Welcome to the show, Peter. So we like a bit of action in Brussels here at GB News. First of all, can we set out what's in this plan, 26-page plan called Hope, Courage and Pride? What's in it that the European Union don't like?
Well, there's a whole range of centralized measures. When it comes to agriculture, for example, the Netherlands is not going to implement very strict nitrogen measures that would have seen farms being shut down at taxpayers' expense. When it comes to immigration, I think there we can see some kind of a clash with the EU, because the new Dutch government will ask for an opt-out from EU migration policies. At the moment, there's only one country that has such an opt-out, and that is Denmark, and it has been quite successful in using that to be more tough on immigration. And also important, the Netherlands will ask to pay a lot less into the EU budget.
This sounds like the spirit of Brexit, Peter Klepp. This is exactly what British voters woke up to, the fact we didn't have control of our borders, we didn't have control of our money. Some of the detail in this plan is that people without a valid residence permit will be deported by force if necessary, and also people granted the rights to remain in the Netherlands will not be granted priority on social housing lists, more border checks and opting out of the allocation of asylum seekers across the 27 member states. That sounds like a government that was elected on those pledges. It sounds like that's their policy platform. Are Brussels seriously going to dig in and say you can't do it? That'd be a massive row.
Well, of course, to give an opt-out, you need to change the EU treaties, and that is very difficult. You know, I do think it will put more pressure on, you know, development that we see all across the EU. This week, the Czech Prime Minister revealed that already 19 EU member states are in favor of what can be described as a Rwanda-style policy of basically outsourcing asylum processing. And we've seen that Australia has done something along those lines, and it's the only way to stop the chaos at the border that is also deeply worrying many Europeans.
And Peter Klett, when you say things like 19 out of 27 European Union member states would like something like Rwanda, of course, in early June, Peter Klett, we have the forthcoming MEP elections. Do you think we're going to see a swing towards the political parties that are in favour of stronger border control, in favour of precisely the kind of thing that the Netherlands would like to do here and the EU don't like?
I do think so. If you look at the opinion polls, indeed, the right-wing parties, right-wing populist parties seem to be, on the winning hand. But let's not be too optimistic. At the end of the day, it will still be possible in the European Parliament to get a majority for many of the regulations and business as usual policies, basically, that we have seen over the last 5 years. If you look at the EPP, which is the party of the German Christian Democrats, they have been supporting almost all of the green, policies. They have even supported the ban on the combustion engine, from 2035, the combustion engine which was invented in Germany. So the political mainstream is changing, but it's going very, very slow.
OK, Peter, very quickly, if we could. Brexit was the first. We were the first up the ladder. Italy are the favourites to be the next. Do you think there could be a Nexit? Could the Netherlands be looking at getting out of the EU?
I don't think so. The case of Britain was quite specific. The Netherlands is, hosting the biggest port of Europe, Rotterdam. It's strongly dependent on frictionless trade with, the rest of mainland Europe. I do think that if you're looking for the next exit, then you have to look north. Denmark, Sweden, I think we're still a long way off, but unfortunately, because the European Union refuses to listen to all these signals, you can see, I think, a development where, similar things like what we saw in the UK are also taking place. Similar sentiment is coming up. People are talking about, some kind of referendum lock. Remember that? So it's very interesting. But again, I don't think that's for tomorrow. That's going to take, quite a few years still.
We have to leave it there. Peter Klett, an excellent summary. Please join us again on the show. That's the Editor-in-Chief of the Brussels Report, Peter Klett. Excellent. The spirit of Brexit is alive and kicking. Now, looking ahead, it's going to be an absolutely massive weekend of sports. Manchester City could win the Premier League for a record-breaking fourth time in a row, while Britain's Tyson Fury, of course, will try to become the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world when he takes on Usyk later on. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's News Channel.
Hello and welcome to the latest GB News forecast from the Met Office. It's a tale of sunny spells and sharp showers for the rest of today and the next few days, in fact. Low pressure slipping away, so it's going to be less dominant across the UK, but still some instability in the air, and with warm sunshine in places, we are seeing the cloud development and the showers for many places during the rest of this afternoon and into the start of the evening. But overnight, as the temperatures tail away, we're going to see plenty of dry weather and some clear spells in the west, but cloudier skies elsewhere. And where we've got the cloud, 12 or 13 Celsius by dawn, where we've got the clear spells into the single figures. Many places will be dry as we start off the weekend. There'll be some sunshine around as well, but into the east of England, especially East Anglia and the far southeast, so into Kent, for example, some showery rain starting to appear, 1 or 2 showers elsewhere across the south coast. Wales, northwest England, plenty of sunshine first thing, but for northeast England as well as eastern Scotland, a lot of low cloud and mist. Northern Ireland seeing patchy cloud and mist as well. Largely dry for Scotland, some decent sunny spells in places. And as we go through the morning, actually, where we've got the layers of cloud, that will tend to break up. We're going to see some sunny spells developing, but there'll also be, once again, some shower development. Western and central Scotland seeing some sharp showers, but The majority of the showers will affect Wales and the southwest of England, and here they could be very lively with some heavy rain in places. Temperatures away from the showers and into the warm sunny spells reaching 20 to 23 Celsius. But those showers will continue to affect parts of Wales and the southwest into the evening before eventually fading away. And then into Sunday, again, warm sunny spells for many, but there will be some showers around, particularly across parts of southern England. Bye-bye.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria DiPiero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Welcome back, 5:48, the final furlong of the Martin Daubney Show on GB News. Now, it's a massive weekend of sport ahead. Of course, Tyson Fury is taking on Alexander Usyk, each in with the chance to make heavyweight boxing history. And it's also the last weekend of the Premier League, of course, and Manchester City will win the title for a record 4th time if they win at home to West Ham. Nothing else can touch them then. Well, that's a lot to get stuck into, and let's do that, because I'm now joined by the sports journalist Chris Scudder. Chris, always an absolute delight. Let's start with the Premier League. Basically, it's Man City's to lose. What do you think is going to happen?
They're going to win it again. Of course they are. Listen, they're winning constantly at the moment, and they proved the other night against Spurs that they're not going to let this slip. West Ham, very unpredictable. And, the Man City thing, we know they're the best team. They've been the best team for a long time. They've got themselves onto this pedestal. There are those 115 charges, Premier League charges, which we wait to see what will happen. We've seen clubs have their points deducted this season. Everton, Nottingham Forest, City, we wait to see what happens. But that's not going to happen until much later this year, we don't think. But right now, City untouchable, and they've just got to win that game against West Ham tomorrow. And there's nothing that Arsenal can do. Feel for Arsenal. They've been probably as good as City all year, but they're up against the machine, and it'll be a massive surprise if City don't win it tomorrow on Sunday.
There is still the outside hope. Of course, it's Moyes' final game at West Ham. If there's an upset, if there's a draw there, then Arsenal dreams could still be alive.
They could. Arsenal got to win their game against Everton as well. I don't know. I mean, City are just, especially at home, they're patient. They know how to get the job done. It would be an incredible story if they were to fall at this hurdle. And history is waiting to be made. I know they've got those financial advantages, but nobody's done it before. 4 titles in a row. Man United have done it before, but City, this is a different team. 6 in 7 years it'll be. And, there's no signs that until Pep leaves the club, I don't think that it's going to stop.
All right, Scuds, let's move now to the boxing. Genuinely a clash of 2 titans. Fury, Usyk. The bookies can't put a cigarette paper between the pair of them. It's too close to call. How do you think that one's going to go? Will the Gypsy King bring it home?
I think you're right. I mean, it's really, really hard to call. I mean, there's an old adage in boxing that a good big one always beats a good little one. And that's what we got here. I mean, Fury is a big guy. He was 20 stone his last fight, just about. I think he's going to be a bit lighter this time, but he's still going to be much heavier than Usyk, who naturally is a cruiserweight. But, technically, they're both fantastic boxers. I think it's just a question of what's going to be in Fury's head. I was a bit... The other day, he said that this is all about not how many titles are on the line, but how much money I'm going to make, which is like $100 million. And I think if he's going in with that attitude, then, Usyk, who's got his whole, war-torn Ukraine right behind him, he's a fantastic boxer. And, if he's off it slightly Fury, I think he'll lose. But, he's got a massive size advantage, 7-inch reach advantage, 6 inches in height. And if he's on his game, which he wasn't in his last fight against the MMA guy, if he's off his game, I think he'll lose. If he's on it, I think he probably just edge it. But honestly, Usyk's a great fighter, and I don't think anybody would begrudge him becoming the first undisputed champion since Lennox Lewis 25 years ago, just about.
And Scuds, it all comes down as well to how much blubber Tyson Fury is carrying. When he's in shape, he's so much sharper. How's he looking?
Yeah, he's lost a bit. I mean, he always carries a bit in his lower belly. I mean, he's got the weigh-in. The weigh-in's going to be in about 10 minutes, I think, in Saudi. He's lost weight since his last fight. The MMA guy, I don't know what he was thinking. I mean, don't forget he's retired once. He's had, mental health problems, all kinds of things. And you never quite know with Fury. But when he's on it, and he's a huge guy. He's a huge guy. He's very difficult to beat. But, as I say, he's up against the great technician who has beaten Anthony Joshua twice. And I wouldn't be surprised if Usyk wins, really wouldn't.
I want to very, very quickly get your opinion on a story that really caught my eye. Astonishing. The Palestinian FA have complained to FIFA and they've joined forces with a bunch of other FAs. They're trying to kick Israel out of world football. Can that possibly be allowed to happen?
Well, Gianni Infantino, the FIFA president, always says football should never become a hostage for politics. But if this does come off, then that's exactly what's going to happen. They've done it with Russia, of course. They've done it with Zimbabwe as well, but they've been allowed back now. But it's a proposal that has come from the Palestinian FA, obviously after what's been going on in the Middle East. And it's got the backing of a number of countries, Algeria, Iraq, Jordan, Syria, Yemen. So what's going to happen is going to be a legal assessment now by FIFA. And then they're going to put it to the council. They're going to listen to both sides of the argument. Palestine's saying, I'll quote here, when are you going to act with the same severity and urgency as it did in other cases, or other wars, in other words? And Israel saying in reply, we're facing a cynical and hostile attempt by the Palestinian Association to harm Israeli football. So it'll go to a vote in July.
OK, that can't be allowed to happen. Chris Scudder, we have to leave it there. Thanks for joining us. Superb stuff. Thanks for joining me. I'll be back on Monday. Next is Jubes & Co. First, it's your weather with Ada McGibbon. Have a great Friday.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to the latest GB News forecast from the Met Office. It's a tale of sunny spells and sharp showers for the rest of today and the next few days, in fact. Low pressure slipping away, so it's going to be less dominant across the UK, but still some instability in the air, and with warm sunshine in places, we are seeing the cloud development and the showers for many places during the rest of this afternoon and into the start of the evening. But overnight, as the temperatures tail away, we're going to see plenty of dry weather and some clear spells in the west, but cloudier skies elsewhere. And where we've got the cloud, 12 or 13 Celsius by dawn, where we've got the clear spells into the single figures. Many places will be dry as we start off the weekend. There'll be some sunshine around as well, but into the east of England, especially East Anglia and the far southeast, so into Kent, for example, some showery rain starting to appear, 1 or 2 showers elsewhere across the south coast. Wales, northwest England, plenty of sunshine first thing, but for northeast England as well as eastern Scotland, a lot of low cloud and mist. Northern Ireland seeing patchy cloud and mist as well. Largely dry for Scotland, some decent sunny spells in places. And as we go through the morning, actually, where we've got the layers of cloud, that will tend to break up. We're going to see some sunny spells developing, but there'll also be, once again, some shower development. Western and central Scotland seeing some sharp showers, but the majority of the showers will affect Wales and the southwest of England. And here they could be very lively with some heavy rain in places. Temperatures away from the showers and into the warm sunny spells reaching 20 to 23 Celsius. But those showers will continue to affect parts of Wales and the southwest into the evening before eventually fading away. And then into Sunday, again, warm sunny spells for many, but there will be some showers around, particularly across parts of southern England. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Gary King. In Surrey, the clockwise M25, long delays at the moment following a vehicle having a tyre change earlier between junction 11 at Chertsey and 12 at the M3. Delays though back towards junction 10 at Wisley. In Bedfordshire, the southbound M1 has the lane closed and queues, follows a breakdown between junction 11 at Dunstable South and junction 10 Luton Airport Spur Road. Derbyshire, northbound M1, there's a lane closed and queues, follows a breakdown between junction 29 at Chesterfield and 29A at Markham Vale. Greater Manchester, the westbound M58 remains closed. Long delays following an accident between the Orwell interchange at the M6 and junction 3 at Bickerstaff. And in South Yorkshire, the M18 looking very slow after an earlier police investigation both ways around junction 2 at the A1M. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Don't miss your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far. A totally terrific £20,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer spectacular. You could use that cash to splash out on a holiday, make the garden glam, buy a new car, or just save it for a rainy day. Whatever you'd spend £20,000 on, make sure you don't miss the chance to make it yours. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Hello there, happy Friday to you. I'm Michelle Dewberry and this is Jubes & Co.
There isn't just clear blue water between the parties, there is deep blue water. An ocean of deep blue water.
Why are so many people seemingly getting weirder by the day? And also, do you think there is really a clear blue ocean between the two main parties? Because if you ask me, it's more like some kind of deflated paddling pool between them. Also, the rich list is out. The top spot has a net worth of almost £40 billion. Many people are saying it's immoral for people to have that much money. Is it? Also, do you reckon the UK should be accepting refugees from Gaza? I can tell you my panel tonight, including Professor Matt Goodwin, have very different opinions on that. Also, the double child killer, Colin Pitchfork. He has lost his appeal for his parole hearing to be held behind closed doors. Good. Shouldn't all parole hearings be done in public? That's all to come before 7 o'clock, but first let's cross live for tonight's latest news headlines.
Very good evening to you. It's just after 6 o'clock. I'm Sam Francis. A look at the headlines at this hour. A teacher has been convicted of having sex with two schoolboys, becoming pregnant by one of them. Manchester Crown Court heard 30